Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, headbangers of all ages, it is 9 p.m. on a Friday, and you know what that means. It is time for the next edition of Heavy Metallurgy. I am one of your hosts, Alan. It's good to be here with you all tonight. I am joined by the best co-host in the business, Mr. Marty the Worm. Marty, how are you doing this week?
Oh, you need to aim higher. You need to aim higher, my friend. I'm doing pretty well. Doing good. Good to see you as always. Another week in the books. And I do want to say to anybody here in the chat that joined us on Bandcamp for the Bindrune listening party for the new Aham Kara, the Hero of the Lost. Thank you for joining us and participating. It was a lot of fun. Album drops a week from tonight. And yeah, we appreciate you. Definitely, if you haven't heard it, check out the album. It's a ripper for sure. Definitely good stuff. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody that showed up.
Indeed. And if you need some more information about it, Jimmy from Future Ruins reviewed it here on Heavy Metallurgy a week or two ago and did a really nice job on it. So you can also check out his review to find out some more details. Cheers to William. Cheers to Psychic. Thanks for dropping in while you had a chance. Skull of the Viking, good to see you as always. Hello to everybody joining in the chat. Nice to see lots of folks. There's going to be someone who is not in the chat tonight because he is making his debut here on the Heavy Metallurgy channel. Marty, shall we go ahead and bring the gentleman out?
Yes, all you folks in the chat know him as Celtic Frosty. We know him as that as well, but we also know him as Daryl. Daryl, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey,
welcome.
Guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
great
thank
to
you
have
so
you
much
on.
for joining us. Yep.
This is awesome.
Yep, we've talked about it for a while. You've recently joined the YouTube video making community of content creators, which is really cool. I know you thought it over for a long time, kind of deciding what you wanted to do, but you took the plunge. You've done a few videos and been doing a great job. For those who haven't checked it out, Daryl just put up his room tour video. Was it yesterday or earlier today?
Yesterday.
And his room is sick. Absolutely crammed with all kinds of cool stuff. We should definitely hop over there and check it out.
Coming down for a sleepover. I want to sleep over in that room.
I just want to hang out there. I mean, it is a really, really awesome music room. But yes, the link to his channel is down in the show notes. So please go check it out. Leave a comment, subscribe, blast the bell icon, finger the button, and all the weird stuff you're supposed to do for YouTube videos.
This is a kid show.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Your videos have been really well done and folks are enjoying them. But yeah, and we are really happy to have you on board here tonight. We asked Daryl what he'd like to talk about. He had several really good ideas, but we pretty quickly settled on one. Daryl, what topic have you brought to the table for everybody tonight?
Sure. So the idea I brought tonight was our metal mentors. I had 4 or 5 ideas, but they all kind of stemmed from a place where I was in the chat and you guys were doing the work, and I can just sit back and make danger jokes and you guys do the hard work. But then I kind of had that backfire on me because you guys asked me to expand on one of my ideas. But I was just intrigued with the idea of how we come to this music before we had this community. So I was talking it over with these guys, and when I looked up the word mentor, I mean, one of the key ideas is its guidance over a long period of time. And we kind of loosened that definition to just bring it down to, it could be as simple as, I saw this guy wearing a t-shirt once. So just the idea that we're exposed to something from a non-internet means. And it turned out to be an album that's super important to us.
Yeah, it was a really good idea for a topic because we kind of throw these stories out, from time to time. It's like, oh yeah, back in the day, I, found out about this from that source or this source. So yeah, to kind of bring it all together and focus on it was a cool idea. And, some of these things we'll talk about are a little bit of a lost art at this point too. The internet, of course, it is nice, having, easy access to so much stuff and being easy to check out. Sometimes it may sound like, old timers are sort of poo-pooing it as a bad thing. But, it did suck back in the day trying to track down a band that maybe you had just heard about, but couldn't find the record. You could spend years looking for shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Being able to hop online and pretty quickly track down most of the things that you're curious about today is a real boon to heavy metal fans and fans of other stuff too, of course. But there is a lot of nostalgia associated with how we tracked down some of those old records, how we made those connections. And yeah, a lot of times, like you said, Daryl, a lot of times it was like a sort of long-term relationship. It wasn't always just like a one-time thing, but sometimes you kept going back to a source over and over, and they helped you find a lot of cool and interesting things. Kind of in that, like you said, mentorship in the long-term commitment or relationship. So yeah, we'll talk about some different examples of all this stuff tonight. But let's see. Anything else you kind of want to highlight on the topic before we start diving in and taking turns? Marty, what was your take on the topic and how you approached it?
I struggled picking for this. It isn't because it just up here in northern Michigan, I felt really removed from the underground scene, which I didn't really discover that there was an actual underground until later. But I had a couple friends that were very instrumental in my music growth, and which I'll talk about tonight. But a small circle of friends that like this style of music here. So I'm thinking really hard. I'm like, well, every album I show could be, my friend showed me this. My friend showed me this. I had to really sit and think about other ways that I come across some of this stuff, and I was talking back in the dugout that what I'm showing tonight is going to kind of feel like my reply to Daryl's your musical evolution type of thing. How the path it's set up exactly how I would have probably set it up for if I did a response for that video. So
nice.
I don't know if I'm bending the rules a little bit here tonight, but I'm going to. I think it isn't always people that turn me on some of this stuff. It's media outlets or whatever. But we'll get into all that stuff as we go further down the track. But yeah, for me it was first of all remembering. I mean, hell, I'll be 54 in a couple months, and some of this shit I think I've forgotten some of, and I just wish I could have picked more because there's just a lot of gaps.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of time has passed too. I mean, I started collecting and being interested in music in the late 70s, so I mean, it's been a long journey. It's always been there. It's always been, like my best friend, having this music to fall back on in moods, or, have a music for every mood I might be in or whatever. And now the cool thing about it is I've been at it long enough. My son is getting into it. So I'm starting to get the excitement of helping him. I have more fun buying shit for him than I have buying for me these days. So it's been a cool, circle of life type of thing with when it comes to music. But yeah, we'll dig in all that stuff
someday, sure. Simba, all this vinyl shall be yours.
And I've said that. I'm like, do not throw this in the dumpster when I die. Seriously, there's some shit in here A, you're gonna want, and B, it might be worth something. Maybe we'll see. But the only retirement plan I have is those records on that shelf over there. So sad but true. It's sad but true. But yeah. How about you, Alan?
Yeah, it wasn't too hard a topic for me to tackle. Daryl and I started thinking along kind of the same lines pretty early as we discussed things on email. And so, yeah, it's just kind of a matter of picking particular albums. I kind of thought, like, okay, what were some of the important, sources of information? That I learned about stuff from. And then picking, some cool and different examples of things that came from each one. So that was kind of my approach, was think about, what things helped me discover different albums over time. And in a lot of cases, it was like, okay, this one person or this one source helped me discover a lot of records. Now let me just pick a couple of them that will be interesting to talk about a bit. But yeah, for these two, we'll focus a lot, on kind of the background story of how we found them, more so than just descriptions of the albums. Some of these people will know pretty well anyway. If there's something more obscure, we can provide more details on that. But I thought it was a pretty cool topic. Wasn't too hard. Sure. It took me just a few minutes to kind of start the list And once I got to thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, there actually were a lot of different things that helped me find records. But to your point, Marty, yeah, it is getting to the point where it can be a little bit difficult to remember exactly when or where a certain album might have been stumbled across. It's like, did I get that one in college, or did that come from a friend? Time adds up, and sometimes the details get a little fuzzy. But
I used to
think I've got a
remember where
pretty
I
good
bought each CD. I could go through my rack and tell you where I bought it from, but that knowledge is starting to become a bit fuzzy. It just is.
Yeah, it does fade a little bit with time. But shall we get started around the table then, fellas?
Sure.
For sure.
All right, Daryl, you know the rules. The guest always gets to go first. So what would you like to start us off with?
Okay. So I'm going to go to a period in time that was maybe my biggest growth, and that would be 86, 87. So my freshman into sophomore year of high school. My crew that I hung around with were all big metalheads. We were already into the first three Slayer, first three Metallica. We had heard Voivod. We've heard Exciter, Anthrax. But other than those two Canadian ones I mentioned, not a lot outside the U.S., even into my early sophomore year. Because we kind of had to fight for ourselves. No one was really going to help us. We hadn't found resources yet. So we're all in freshman year of high school. And in our high school, there were two large groups of metalheads. One group was my two buddies' older brothers. So they weren't exactly our best friends, but they did give us some guidance. We heard music when we were around them. They didn't kick our butts in school. So that was good. The other group were the classic high school bullies. This tandem of dudes, one always wore a Scorpion shirt. The other one had a rotation of 3 Iron Maiden shirts. The Iron Maiden dude was the one who spoke. And the one in the Scorpion shirt never spoke. He just hovered over people and intimidated them. So we didn't want to encounter these two guys, even though we respected you're a metalhead. So we're standing at the lockers one day, and Iron Maiden and Scorpions are approaching us. And we've never talked to them ever. So this was, something was going to go down. So I told my buddies, you guys can, divvy up my collection. Tell my parents I love them, whatever. And,
I'll be in the bathroom getting my head flushed down the toilet.
Yeah. So the Scorpions guy actually comes up to me, presses a tape into my chest, and the only words I ever heard this guy speak, he said, "I like your shirts. You think Slayer's heavy? Listen to this."
Okay.
And it was a cassette of Pleasure to Kill.
Nice. Wow.
That opened.
I like Scorpions guy. He's a pretty cool dude.
Well, with those two shirts, I didn't think we were going to be learning anything from them, but it totally surprised me. So when that entered my world, everything changed. We had heard, obviously, Tom Araya's vocals, Jeff Becerra, but Neely's vocals were the first thing I heard that was scary. He just sounded scary. So this album to this day, I think is a 10 out of 10, even though our community knows there's one creator I like more, but I think they're both perfect records. So that is my first mentor, an unlikely source who opened my world to German thrash.
Right on.
That's
good start.
Awesome.
Good pick. Yeah. Great story too. All right, Alan.
All right. I'm going to start with a pretty obvious one. Some folks, James mentioned this very first thing in the chat tonight, but Metal Maniacs, other zines, and I'll pick some of other zines later, but yeah, Metal Maniacs, of course, I think was a huge inspiration and source of info for tons of people, especially in the US, where it was one of the only kind of really solid zines that you could get easily. You could find other zines, of course, but they always took a bit more digging around. Whereas Maniacs was available at a lot of newsstands and such. So, yeah, we all found lots of bands through these. I just picked this one old issue at random. A thing about, following a zine month to month too was that you could start over time to kind of figure out, which reviewers had similar tastes to you and which ones didn't. So you could start to kind of learn, whose word to take. That if this writer said, "Hey, this album's really great, you got to check it out," you would know, all right, I really should check that out and pick it up if I get a chance to. Whereas the reviewers that you didn't really align with, if they were going on about something, it's like, well, yeah, okay, that's fine, but you didn't make it a priority because you knew that they were into a lot of stuff that you weren't. That was one of the cool things about zines. Like Daryl mentioned with the definition of mentor, it's almost like you had this kind of longer term relationship where every month you flipped specifically to see what certain people were writing about and what they had to say about certain albums. In Maniacs, for me, there were several people who I always, connected with. Marty was one of them. If Marty talked up an album a lot, either in Worm Gear or in Metal Maniacs, I knew there was probably an 80 to 90% chance I was going to like the album. Same with Jeff Wagner's stuff. If Jeff mentioned something was really good, there was a very high chance I would like it. I can only remember one thing that Jeff ever really gave a great review for, and I listened to it and couldn't get into it. Other folks too, Chris Maycock, very reliable. Sue Knowles' stuff, Sue Verica, has done stuff on Metallurgy for us before. If she praised something, it's like, yeah, I should probably go check that out. Sue knows her stuff.
Ula Garrett, Void
Yep.
Kurgan. I mean, all the old school for sure.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And then there were others, that could be, more, of a crapshoot. For example, Craig Zoller was very much, it was a 50-50 with me. If Craig was big on an album, I was either going to love it or I didn't want anything to do with it. So it was always kind of like, oh man, that was the kind of, high risk, high ceiling, but low floor kind of situation. It's like, Craig says this is great. It could be the best album of the year, or I might really have buyer's remorse. I don't know. But anyway, an example I picked of one that I found out about through Metal Maniacs, and Jeff Wagner in particular reviewed this album when it came out. I had never heard of the band. It was obviously kind of a smaller band, more of an underground thing. But his review was really interesting. You could tell he thought a lot of the record. And I happened to find it, when I went to the record store a couple of months later. I remembered his review. I'm just like, oh, that's the thing Jeff was on about. Yeah. Got to pick it up. It was Solstice, New Dark Age. This is a UK band that, for this album, was kind of in an epic doom direction, which was actually very different from their debut album, which really, the debut is just straight Candlemass worship. By their own admission, the guys that formed the band, they went to a Candlemass concert, were blown away, and immediately felt, hey, we should make a band that sounds like that. But by the second album, they were going in a much more sort of epic direction. They'd had some member changes, and it's a pretty awesome album to this day. The first side in particular has a really unique sound to it, very epic, triumphant, almost martial feel to it at times. Just really interestingly crafted songs. There's a lot of lyrics crammed in, so it's kind of very densely written, but well written at the same time, and is held up extremely well over time. And it's one of those things that if I had just seen it at the record store that day, I might have glanced at it and been like, oh, that's an interesting cover, but I wouldn't have bought it blind. I'd just been like, don't know what the heck that is. But because of reading that review and knowing over time that, Jeff's reviews were ones that I tended to click with really strongly, let me pick it up, and it's been a long-term favorite ever since. So, Metal Maniacs, great source of information in the pre-internet era. So that is my first endeavor. Marty, how do you want to start this out for your picks?
Well, I was thinking about in the past. I don't remember how I got into Kiss. I have no idea. Talking to my dad, he said, "Oh, we were watching TV one day, and they came on TV, and you just wouldn't shut up about it afterwards. You just were constantly talking about Kiss, 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 Kiss." And my grandmother bought me this record. Oddly enough, wearing a shirt of it tonight. That was totally not planned. But yeah, and so the television was my first gateway, and if it wasn't for that fateful moment, it pointed me in the direction of actually. I grew up in a house where my parents were they had 8 tracks, records, and Murray, Mac Davis, Neil Diamond, ABBA, a lot of country stuff, Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, that type of stuff, which I enjoyed. I'd sit in the basement and put Legos together and listen to their 8 tracks. But once Kiss entered my hemisphere, it was all over for that. And there was this kid I was in grade school with. His name was Jimmy Masta, rest in peace. I was talking about Kiss, and he mentioned he had the album Kiss Destroyer. Well, I found my way over to his house. I stay over. I was over there because I wanted to check out this Kiss album. Obviously I couldn't go to the internet and click and listen to Kiss Destroyer. And he had this partied on, wrecked copy of Destroyer. We listened to it the entire weekend I was there, and he ended up giving it to me essentially when I left there because I was so just like absolutely enamored with it. I should have pulled that one, but you all know what Destroyer looks like. But so in a way, he was kind of a mentor, he kind of furthered me down the path. My grandma got me this one. Jimmy Masta gave me a chewed up copy of Destroyer, and it was all over from there. Just Kiss, a lot of Kiss, a little bit of ABBA was kind of my diet. I know that's a weird mix, but that makes sense nowadays, I guess. But yeah, so I guess it's kind of like my origin story. I'm mixing. I'm crossing the streams on topics here a little bit, but whatever. You can kick me out if you want. But yeah, Kiss, Jimmy Masta. We'll start there.
Awesome.
That brings us back to Daryl.
That's cool. That's it's funny how similar our stories are because
I know.
Kiss Alive too, and it was my mom that bought it, but
yep,
almost the same.
Yep.
And in fact, the guy that I spoke of in my video that introduced me to Kiss when we were on that snow day, I'm going to circle around to later in the stream. But next on my pile, we're going to go to an unusual source for a mentor. We're going to the movie theater. So this would be 87 or 88. The movie came out in 86, but I'm not sure when it was released in the US. Mike and I were talking about this on Discord. I'm pretty sure it was 87 or 88 that I saw it, though. We all went. We knew it was a movie about metalheads. We knew it was dark. That's really all we knew. And so we went in. The movie was River's Edge. And that soundtrack, of course, has Slayer. It has Fate's Warning. And it has Hallows Eve.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I went out and bought Tales of Terror actually first and was disappointed the song from the movie wasn't on it because the song from the movie is Lethal Tendencies off this album, which actually I like a little more now. But yeah, this album is so great. And so was the movie. Just that scene where he invites the younger kid into his car because he steals the beer for him. And he just cranks up the radio and pulls away, and Hallows Eve starts kicking in. Yep. Like, we searched for that album the very next day. We were at Camelot looking for that. So Hallows Eve from River's Edge. That's my next one.
Nice.
Yep.
Good deal. Yeah. And that's a good album. It gets overlooked a little bit because folks always talk about the debut. That one's thrashier, but it's still a solid album.
Every song's about death too. It's a concept album.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yep, that's a good point.
Yep. All right, Alan, what's up with you next here?
All right, I'll stay in zine territory. Metal Maniacs was the big one, but there were lots of other smaller zines out there as well, of course. Jack just mentioned the Lamentations of the Flame Princess was one that people liked back
Jim
in the
Raggy,
day.
represent.
Yeah. I never had steady access to many zines. It was the kind of thing that even like in the local indie shops when I was in college, they'd get an issue of something, be like, oh, cool, there's a metal zine. I'd pick it up, but then they'd never get another issue of it, or it'd be like another year and a half before you could get another issue of it. So very spotty kind of record, but anytime I had a chance to, I would pick them up. One of them that showed up very randomly was Sounds of Death from time to time. Not necessarily the best zine, not the worst either, but again, there you had limited sources of info, so you dug into them and extracted all you could. With this particular issue, it wasn't a review that caught my eye. It was actually a advertisement. The reviews were one thing, but labels, of course, would put ads out, and there was a full-page ad for Osmos titles in this one. And for whatever reason, this really caught my eye. Immortals Battles in the North.
The one just to the below it didn't catch your eye.
The Marduk, like, that's a thing too. But
that one caught my eye first. But whatever.
For whatever reason, the Immortal one sort of was just like, okay, that's the title, the band logo, whatever. Just like, okay, I hadn't heard the band at the time, but I'm like, that looks interesting. And so it kind of was filed in the back of my head to eventually track down Immortals Battles in the North, which I did. It's never been my favorite Immortal album, but it's all right. One thing that disappointed me when I finally found it, I had to mail order it, and it took several weeks to get delivered. The place was really slow to ship it. And when I got it, it didn't have this cover art. It just has, the picture we all know of, the two guys kneeling in the snow.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I thought this picture, it's obviously nothing fancy. It's, just kind of a, snowy nighttime sky picture. But I liked that a lot better than the picture of them kneeling in the snow. So when I looked at it, I was just like, oh, well, okay. Doesn't look as cool as it was, but whatever. Same music. But eventually it did get reissued with the original cover from the promos, which is what I eventually found out that, they kind of switched covers. The original promo copies just had this image. So when the reissue came out, I was just like, you know what? Okay, I have most of Immortal stuff. I'm willing to give that one another chance. And the fact that it has the right cover now is now I will pick it up. So I did eventually get Battles in the North. I got rid of the original copy I bought years and years ago, but then I did rebuy it later on, specifically because it had the correct cover art. But yeah, it was kind of a, also a situation of a blind buy. I didn't know much about Immortal. I'd heard maybe a couple of songs by the time I ordered the disc, but just you went through everything in these zines, not just the reviews, not just the interviews, but even the advertisements could become a potential shopping list of things that you wanted to check out and hear. So that's one I got from a different zine back in the mid 90s.
Asylum rules, Aaron. Totally rules. It's a great glam record. They actually did a really good job on that one. All right. Next up. Well, I lived in the woods and there was no cable. We had 1.5 channels. So I'd have to go into town to see MTV, which, I had a friend that had it, and we just watch it for hours. But before that, Northern Michigan Radio played Round and Round by Rat off of Out of the Cellar. Man, I fell in love with that song. Kiss was still very much part of my diet. And I was starting to, follow along with this whole hair metal thing, even though I don't really consider Rat to be a straight up hair metal band. I know that's probably a stupid thing to say, but they always seemed a lot rockier, a little less. I don't know. It's hard to explain because they did tease and the makeup and the shit, but it just didn't. Their music had more balls, I think, than some of that other stuff. But yeah, this was definitely one of those I bought on tape through the Columbia House. Everybody remember the Columbia House? 1 penny, you get 12 cassettes. I got a whole bunch of this stuff here, but this was a favorite for me, and it got me. This is pretty much adjacent to Kiss at this point. It wouldn't be long after this I started to get the heavier and the heavier and the heavier stuff, but Rat was one of those bands in the glam scene that I still love to this day, and a little bit of Dokken too, but Rat beats them out for sure. But yeah, television. It was the radio. 98 Rock in Traverse City. Definitely back then turned me on to some stuff when I had no friends that were really getting into this stuff, and I was just kind of on my own, just trying to find my way in something other than Kiss. You know what I mean? So yeah, for me, Rat radio.
Nice.
Daryl.
All right. Yeah, I was right with you with Rat. That was an early pickup for me.
Yep.
That and Quiet Riot, Mental Health might have been the first 2 cassettes I bought with my own, like lawn mowing money. Yeah. All right. Next. As I started getting a little older, my first job was washing dishes at a local restaurant, and that kept us there pretty late on Fridays and Saturdays because I was part of the kitchen crew. They wouldn't let me go out into the dining room and make the real money until I cut my hair. So that was a heck of a trade-off.
You showed them now, though. Your hair's cut already.
Now you take all the orders.
So that was a no-brainer at the time. I was fine staying in the kitchen, but later in my high school career, I cut my hair anyway. And yeah, the servers made a lot more than the kitchen, so it was worth it. But anyway, so we would close down the kitchen and have late nights for kids at least, and we would all rush to my buddy Billy's house, who only lived about 5 minutes from the restaurant, so we could catch the remainder of Headbangers Ball. And anybody who watched Headbangers, you know, you had to sift through about an hour and a half of terrible videos to get to one good video, and we're all waiting on the good heavy videos. And one came on that was just a live video, and it just captured my imagination. I loved it immediately. The sound just drew me in. The only thing was the production we couldn't understand, and that band, Coroner, the video for Mass Jackal.
So good. Yep.
Yeah, just we were like, what is with the vocals? Is he singing?
Too quiet.
But yeah, but it just drew me in. I love this album immediately. This is my favorite Coroner. R.I.P. is probably second. I think this is near flawless, except for maybe the cover of Purple Haze. I could do without that. But great album. And just another one. We went out the very next day. We were at Camelot as soon as it opened, you know, DF Corn. So, no.
All right. Ellen.
All right. I got one last zine I'm going to highlight, and then I'll move on to other sources from back in the day. One zine that I did stick with for its entire run of 3 issues was Sentinel Steel zine. Dennis Golby, the guy behind this one, put out about 1 issue a year for 3 years in a row. He also started a distro at the time. And so, of course, the two were linked. He also turned it into a small record label for a time. He did release some stuff on Sentinel Steel Records. So he kind of had a multifaceted approach. And a big thing for Sentinel Steel was that it was one of the few zines I've ever come across from the mid-90s, released in the U.S., that covered European power metal. You know, because that stuff was persona non grata in the United States at that time. Stores did not carry it. If you wanted it, you had to special order it and pay a crap ton and wait a long time for a store to even be able to track it down for you. But Dennis covered that stuff in great detail. And it was perfect for me because I was looking for a lot of that kind of material. And so this scene helped introduce me to a ton of bands that were right up my alley. They were exactly what I wanted to learn about at that time. As an example of one that I learned about from Sentinel Steel, he did, I'm pretty sure it would have been the first interview in English with the main guy behind the band Attack. This is their album 7 Years in the Past. It's a good German, heavy metal, power metal band. They did a bunch of albums. I want to say about 6. He was just always on really small labels. So he never really got the same kind of exposure that bands like Rage, Halloween, The Axe on Steamhammer did. They were more high profile. They had better distribution. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that was never available easily in the US. And as such, you never really would have heard about it. I would never have come across it until years later, once I got on the internet, if it hadn't been for Sentinel Steel covering that kind of band. And, again, I learned pretty quickly that, at least 75% of the stuff that Dennis talks up in here is stuff I'm going to like. And since Dennis had the distro tied into it, he would stock things as best he could. And the prices were reasonable considering, he was having a hard time getting them himself. He did not jack up the prices on stuff. He actually still has the distro today. He hasn't done the zine in 30 years, and I don't think he's released anything on the record label in forever. But he does still have a Sentinel Steel Records distro on both eBay and Discogs. He still stocks an insane amount of European power metal stuff, and his prices are always quite fair as well. He tends to have a lot of the Japanese pressings. As a kid, he lived abroad with his family, and I guess that kind of helped him early on start to establish some connections because he's always had good access to Japanese pressings with the OBI and Korean pressings and all kinds of weird things like that. So yeah, this is my last entry for the zine category of mentors, but those issues of Sentinel Steel, I read and reread and reread and reread these things. Some of them, this one isn't, but yeah, some of them, I've got, things highlighted, notes written in the margins of them. Just again, they kind of became the shopping list of I want to check out that one and that one. Now this album he said isn't very good. Okay, forget that. I'm not getting that one. But this one he talks up is album of the year. Going to have to see if I can find that as well. So another good long-term source of info was Sentinel Steel zine. There were great small zines out there, but this was the one if you wanted to learn European power metal in the US.
All right. Well, I kind of jumped ahead of my timeline here. I have different mediums here, and I messed it up. But I was 12 years old in 1983, and since I lived out of town, I had to ride the school bus in, and due to that, they put elementary school kids on the bus with the high school kids, so it was a mixed age bus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the older kids, we called them the big kids because, and they were kind of scary. There was a guy rode the bus. His name was Gordon Huey, but everybody called him Swig. He had the bangs and the long hair. He looked like a fat Bruce Dickinson. He always brought his boom box on, and in the back, I asked him one day what he was listening to because I liked it. It was Def Leppard's Pyromania. And I always asked him to play that tape, and he was a nice guy. He looked big and scary, and they try to intimidate the kids just because that's what you do, I guess. But he would put this tape on for me. Of course, I play Motley Crue and stuff too, but I really I still have a deep nostalgia for this tape, for this album, especially Billy's Got a Gun. And I mean, there's some great songs on here. But yeah, and it just really resonated with me. And he was, the denim jacket, and he was probably stoned most of the time, and just a totally cool, the typical metal vision you have in your head, a guy that fits the stereotype. It was this guy. It was Swig. And so through them, my internet then was a guy named Swig on the school bus in a boombox, a shitty boombox playing blasting Pyromania. So yeah, that would be another, I think, in the mentor category for sure. But definitely first 3 Def Leppard albums for me. Definitely a lot of fun. Good band.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes, the school bus. I forgot about that one, but yeah, I learned a few things on the bus myself.
Oh yeah.
Same here. A lot of knowledge is passed down on a school bus.
The school bus was scary, man. The big kids were kind of scary. They sat in the back of the bus and threw stuff at us, and it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary. I'm sure all kids that have to go through that shit, it's bad for everyone.
Yeah. One quick aside before my next album. thank you to you guys again for having me on. I realized just
Fuck yeah, man.
before you brought me on in the backstage that this is actually an anniversary for me, because when I first spoke up and said hi to you guys, it was the Easter weekend when you did religious themes with Rick. So almost to the day, this is my anniversary with Metallurgy. So
Wowzers. Cool.
Very cool.
yeah. All right. Next pick. One of the biggest mentors for me in Rochester was when we discovered there was an extreme metal radio show on college radio. So this was before internet. I mean, how are you going to find it other than word of mouth? And there was a little entertainment magazine that circulated around in Rochester, and it listed the college radio stations and their programming for every day of the week. And on Tuesday night, it just had this little blurb that said Sonic Insanity, Extreme Metal. I was like, what? I am there. So we tried to stay up as best we could, or we took rotations and tape stuff throughout the night and then listened to it throughout the week and traded tapes. And so Sonic Insanity, it was Tuesday nights, 10 to 1, I think, something like that. And one of the first things I heard that blew my mind, I did not know what to think of this, was they played Immortal Rights. And I was like, what is this? I mean, Scream Bloody Gore, Leprosy, or no, just Scream Bloody Gore was the only thing I'd heard at that point that compared to this. So, you know, David Vincent's vocals, I think he's one of my all-time favorites, at least back in the day. Even that Ultimus that's new, those last two tracks are pretty good. There's just a lot of other nonsense on there. But this one was just a huge step for me. And didn't like it. Had to circle around to my friend and say, can I borrow that Morbid Angel like a few months later when I could handle it? Then I made a copy of it, and one of my all-time favorite death metal albums.
Absolutely.
All along. Near perfect.
Yeah, Steve. I just replied to you, but yeah, I can't wait. I'm sure you'll hear something about it on this channel. Not sure.
If we have time, we'll work it in, maybe.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Before I forget, Alan, I talked to Zoller the other night, and he said when we do the talk about that album, he wants to be a part of the conversation.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
So
we will make that happen for him. Absolutely.
Right on. Okay. Alan.
All right. College radio is a really, really good call, Daryl. That one had a big impact for me too. You know, wrapping up high school, getting to go to college. Sure, it's like, okay, great. You know, learn stuff, do things. But a big part for me is like, I'm going to a place where there might be easier access to heavy metal. You know, growing up in a very rural area, it was a big deal growing up when my town got its second stoplight, put it that way. And I'm not making this up. So yeah, going off to, you know, a college campus, you know, I kind of thought, you know, there'd be heavy metal everywhere and lots of heavy metal fans. That didn't necessarily pan out, but there were some. And, you know, wandering around campus that first week or so, looking at, you know, various flyers and stuff posted, I came across this, which I took off the board and took with me. There was a college radio station and their metal show was called Metal Storm.
They're probably wondering why they only had one person listening, because you took the only marketing they did off the damn wall. Good job, Professor Steele.
They had enough funding for one photocopy, and I took it before anybody else saw it.
We've got one person listening.
But they probably felt it was that way sometime, because you could call in and request things, and I drove them nuts some nights. It's like, hey, can you play this? Hey, can you play that? Just like, are you the guy that wanted the other thing? I was like, yeah. Like, okay, it's cool. But yeah, so we had Thursday nights, 11 to 3 a.m. Usually couldn't listen very long on Thursday nights because a lot of times I got stuck with Friday morning classes. But yeah, Friday and Saturday nights, if nothing else was going on. And it wasn't a very big college and it wasn't in a very big town. So a lot of nights there wasn't much else going on. I'd be sitting there, with the boombox turned into 88.1 FM, blank TDK loaded in the cassette deck, start recording every song. If it got to the midpoint and I didn't like it, then stop, rewind the tape, get ready to record the next song. So this was a good channel for me to learn a lot of stuff that I had never heard. First example, I'll cite, band that they played something one of the first times I listened to the show. And I was just like, that's amazing. But I could not for the life of me understand when they announced the name of the band. I was just like, what are they saying? It sounds like they're saying Ice to Earth. Ice to Earth. What the hell kind of name is that? Eventually, I called in and, after we fumbled over the name a couple times, finally figured out they were saying Iced Earth. It was one of the earlier albums than this, but yeah, it was a band I immediately fell in love with. And for, a while there in the mid 90s, Iced Earth was my band. Across these first three albums in particular, they could do no wrong in my book whatsoever. And they got a promo for this album pretty early. This one came out in maybe late summer, early fall of 95. But they had a promo for it really early in 95. So they started playing tracks off of it. And every song was just blowing my mind. So they'd play a song. I'd call them up 10 minutes later and be like, hey, play another one of the songs off that Iced Earth album. They're like, we just played one. I was like, yeah, we'll play a different one. Like, come on, Einstein. It's not hard. No one else is calling and asking for anything. So yeah, I could usually talk them into playing 2 or 3 songs. They didn't play the whole album, but I probably had, 5 of the tracks, dubbed off onto cassette tape, within the first couple of weeks. And so it was a great way to check out things. Burnt Offerings ended up being my favorite album from the 1990s for several years. When people would start asking, what's your favorite album this year? 95, it was Burnt Offerings. Best albums of the decade. Burnt Offerings was always right there at the top of the list for a long time. It has slipped a little bit over the years. I don't go back and listen to it as much as I used to, but still a damn good album. And in my mind, it's kind of the last really essential Iced Earth album. I know a lot of folks like a little bit more of their catalog, and I like some of the other albums, but the first 3, I think, are, the ones you must have. After this, it gets a little hit and miss. But yeah, thanks to Metal Storm and all the late night DJs, I drove nuts with many, many requests to check out random things I had maybe heard the name of, but didn't get a chance to actually hear until I pestered them and they would play it on the radio for me.
All right.
Well, take it away, Marty.
Another one for me is the TV. And I remember sitting with my parents in the lobby waiting to be seated at a Mexican restaurant called La Senorita. They had a TV on, and they had MTV on, which was still kind of newish at the time. And the video for Bark at the Moon came on while we were sitting there, because back in the day, MTV was pretty cool. When they first started, they played kind of whatever throughout the day because they were just kind of taking whatever videos they could get. So you would see, Ozzy along with Duran Duran, or they'd mix everything up. But at this point, I had never really sat and heard a Black Sabbath record. I'm sitting there watching the video. My dad's like, Jesus Christ, look at that fool. I'm like, yeah, look at that guy. It's pretty cool. And of course the song rules. This is great. So I got this on tape when it came out. This is my first Ozzy record. If memory serves, like I said, it's a bit fuzzy at this point. So I'm, what is this? The 3rd album? Obviously I had to backtrack a little bit, and then I started, I think Paranoid was my first Sabbath tape. And it wasn't much longer after this, I saw the video on MTV for Neon Nights, which with Dio singing, that blew me away. I'm like, this band is amazing. Holy crap. But anyway, yeah, Bark at the Moon was an early, I think that same sitting I saw Def Leppard's Photograph, which would, no, I don't think so. That might have been a little bit later. I don't know. Again, it's all mush. The brain is, at this point, it's part of it's rigor mortis. The other part's just kind of slop and foam. But Bark at the Moon was a big one. That was a very cool video and a very good song, and it got me getting into some Ozzy stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Good old MTV.
Yep.
Oh yeah, people have been mentioning it in the chat quite a bit tonight. For our generation, that of course is a huge source.
Huge. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny how much crossover there was with the music at that time too.
Oh,
I think I saw Ozzy perform Bark at the Moon on Solid Gold. Remember that show?
Oh my
yeah.
God. Solid
Yeah.
Gold Dancers.
He
I
did,
was in
yeah.
love.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
But I was surprised to see Ozzy on that when I was a kid.
Rex Smith and Marilyn McCoo were the hosts. You remember that? Yep.
All right.
I remember that. I can't remember other shit, but I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of mine is mushed together. I kind of guess.
Slopping
It's
foam.
in this window of time somewhere.
Yeah.
Throughout the week, Alan and I were talking, and he had mentioned that he didn't have a pick in mind for something he just saw in a T-shirt. And I had this one from the start, and I actually thought, if there's one album I cross with Alan, I bet you it's this. And I bet you it's for the same reason. And so I'm going to pull it now. And if it's in Alan's stack, I'm sorry I ruined it.
No, that's cool. Go for it.
The story just goes with a simple image, not even a band logo, just an image. I saw a lot of band members wearing this image. And of course, the most famous being Metallica, where 3 of the 4 members wore this image.
Mm-hmm.
And the image,
nice.
there. You could just see it on the shirt for Cliff Burton under his denim jacket. And I think he even had the tattoo of it.
Yep, he did.
Yep.
But we're just drawn to that image. What is it? It's got to be brilliant. And the first thing I ever heard from the band was picked up a copy of Legacy of Brutality. So that was my introduction. And we kind of found as much Misfits as we could at the time. I've only ever owned this, Static Age, and Earth, I think.
Earth of Deep, yep.
Yeah. My buddy John had bought that box set that came in the coffin, and I kind of got it from him. But absolutely loved it. When we first put it on, though, it was like, what is this rockabilly crap?
Yeah.
And then,
I was the same way. I've only started warming up to the Misfits marginally over the years. I still don't love them, but I respect them a lot more than I used to. Yeah.
Okay. It hit us like a ton of bricks, and not in a good way, but I learned to love it fairly quickly after. And I love all eras of the Misfits now. I mean, Danzig is the standout, but. And to people in the chat, no, I'm not doing a Fred Durst. It's a hockey thing. Hockey playoff start.
Didn't I say it that I said people are going to call you out for looking? Hey, is this head Fred Durst on tonight? Yeah.
You did call it.
All right. Alan.
See. Hey, George, thanks for jumping in. Hope you're doing good tonight.
What's up, George?
But yeah, it was kind of funny, Daryl. I picked the same band and the same album, but actually for a different reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Legacy of Brutality was my introduction to the Misfits as well. I had heard the name before, but I had never gotten to check out the music until a friend introduced me to him. And this was a guy that he was in several of the same classes I was. So it was like, okay, he must be the same major I am. But they were always kind of like larger classes. It'd be like, 90 people, he's sitting like, 2 tables over. I only really noticed him first because he was like a really big guy, very tall. And he always had like, a big heavy leather jacket on that had a Crimson Ghost icon on one of the arms. So I'm like, that guy probably has good taste in music, but never really had a chance to interact with him for a while. Eventually we did. And yeah, it turned out we had, we're same major, same interests within geology and such, and similar tastes in music. So we hit it off and still buddies today. He was actually, about an hour before the show tonight, Marty, he was texting me saying that he really liked the Fur Bowl recommendations from recent videos.
He checked them out
a
like
shitty fucking name, but the music here is actually killer.
It rules. Yeah, both albums are good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at some point we were taking a road trip to, I think, Pittsburgh. May have been Cleveland, doesn't matter. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, do you know this band Misfits? I'm like, no, but I know the logo, on your jacket. You've got the Crimson Ghost thing on it. He's like, how the fuck do you know what that is if you don't know who the band is? Well, the deal with me is the Crimson Ghost, originated as an old 1930s era cereal. One of those things that was chopped up into chapters. And you would, it was the summer of a movie.
Chopped up into chapters.
But you went to the movies each week, and one of the short reels they would play like in between, a double feature, they'd show like one chapter. It's like maybe like a 10-12 minute chunk of this longer story. And it always ended on a cliffhanger to try to get you to come back the next week to see how the hero escaped or whatever. But yeah, the Crimson Ghost was one of those old things. My dad and a couple of his friends had collected those old like 16 millimeter prints of those films when I was a little kid. So I spent a lot of the years, like, first, second, third grade on weekends. It was really normal to like go down to the basement. They'd put blankets up in front of the windows, set up an old reel-to-reel movie projector, and just like binge watched, all 12 chapters of The Crimson Ghost or Nyoka, Queen of the Jungle, or The Purple Monster. Yes, there was one called The Purple Monster. They weren't all that good. Superman, Batman, Dick Tracy, all kinds of those serials. So yeah, the fact that I knew what the Crimson Ghost was kind of gave me instant street cred with Matt. And so, yeah, we're on this road trip. He's like, well, here, let's, he pumped in this. And now my reaction is kind of the opposite of Daryl's. I was instantly in love with this sound because, yes, a lot of the tracks on here, they're things that we now think of as like static age material. And they do have a little bit more of that kind of throwback rockabilly vibe to them. But that worked perfectly for me because I had grown up listening to that kind of stuff in my dad's record collection. So the fact that you've got this guy sounding like Elvis, I've been listening to Elvis records my whole life. And, the fact that, yeah, there's these clear influences from, crazy stuff like Gene Vincent and the Johnny Burnett trio. It's like they took that old 50s vibe, ramped it up into full-blown punk style and included this weird horror element. I'm like, this is the most fucking brilliant thing I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, I was instantly hooked. Yeah, when we got back from that road trip, went to the record store, bought my own copy of Legacy right away. And yeah, I've been a huge Misfits fan ever since. So that was one where, yeah, a friend introduced me to the band, and it has cost me a lot of money ever since buying Misfits stuff. For sure. So yeah, shout out to Matt. Matt usually he doesn't always watch live, but sometimes he checks these out later. So Matt, that trip you turned me on to both Misfits and Bolt Thrower. You did good there. I appreciate them both.
Well done, Matt.
Cool.
Absolutely. It's yeah. Matt's a good buddy. We've stayed in touch all this time. He's also, I told him tonight, Marty, that the new Halloween was coming. He didn't know about it. He's just like, oh, he might be more excited than you are. It'd be close.
I doubt it.
He would give you a strong run for your money.
Giants and Monsters coming out in September. Everybody.
August 29th. We don't have to wait till September.
Yeah.
August 29th. I'm thinking of a show I'm taking my kid to. Never mind.
What kind of fan are you? You don't even know when it's coming out. I obviously am a more superior Halloween fan than you are.
I'll have 5 different versions of it before the ink's even dry on the covers. All right. Well, all right, Marty, we're getting into 5th grade here, and 5th grade, I went to Cherry Knoll School, which, just a kid going to a grade school. They redistrict the area, so I had to leave 4th grade and go to a town school called Oak Park Elementary School, which was downtown. I had one friend there, but a guy moved in to town. His name was Scott Candy, who has gone on to, was a co-editor of Worm Gear and co-started Binding Recordings with me. We were in bands together. Brother, it's like a brother to me. And he come in, we're fast friends. He started getting into more extreme music, and one catalyst for doing that was the local college. He lived in town, so he could pick up the radio station WNMC, which only has a very small radius of where it picks up because they have a small transmitter. But I'd go over there and he would record their metal show. The guy's name that did the show was Keith. Hey, this is Keith. Sounded totally stoned out of his mind, but he would play all the stuff on there and turn Scott onto this band, Ride the Lightning by Metallica. I remember him playing me. He bought the tape and said, "You got to check this out." And he played Fight Fire with Fire. And I laughed. I'm like, what is this crap? There's no singing and just just like, kill your baby and whatever. I just thought it was hilarious. 2 weeks later, I'm borrowing the tape from him and saying, "This is awesome." So I got to thank Keith from WNMC, wherever he is at now in this world, because he played, and I'm going to show another one here in a minute that he just played. His show was killer. He had his finger on the pulse of what was going on outside of our little stupid town. I don't know if he was from the area or came from somewhere else and just picked up a radio show at the channel. But yeah, this I'm always going to give Metallica a chance. And this is one of those bands, their first 4 albums, I'll give them that, is so insanely important to my musical progression into heavier, faster music. And this shit is just great. Their first 3 albums in particular are fantastic records. They just are. They never really get old. Every time I put them on, it's like, it just takes me back to the excitement of this era. And Scott and Keith were 2 very instrumental people in getting me going down that direction. So definitely musical mentors. Scott, for a lot of this shit, I could say Scott turned me on to most of this stuff moving forward. And there was hundreds of albums I could have shown tonight that I laughed at and scoffed at for being too extreme, but it wasn't much longer down the road. I'm like, okay, I eat crow again. It's awesome. But yep, that's that. I got to thank to a district restructuring to meet a guy that I looked up to in a lot of ways, and a musical style that I still love to this day, for sure.
Very cool.
Right.
Yeah. When my quick thing, Marty, when I bought Ride the Lightning in high school, I bought it at a record bar. I bought 2 tapes, Ride the Lightning and Young MCs, the Bust a Move radio hit at the time. Wow. To this day, I have never had a record store clerk look at me any more strangely as when I handed her those 2 cassette tapes. Right. She literally just kind of looked at them for a second and looked at me. I was like, "Are you sure?"
Did you say, "Hey, baby, how you doing? How you doing?"
No, I was like, a 15-year-old awkward kid, and just counting my pennies to make sure I can afford them both, and it's just like that kind of. Are you sure? Thanks. Don't judge me.
Yep.
Anyway, go ahead. Take it away, Daryl.
Yeah, I agree 100% with the Metallica thing too. I don't pull for Metallica that much, but I feel exactly the same way. I mean, they were so important. Mm-hmm. Not only for what they did, but what they introduced me to. The whole, Nawabum. I wouldn't have gone back to those Nawabum bands that early, at least in my life.
Yep.
Next one for me. This one is funny because the mentor that introduced me to this was the most non-metal kid I had ever seen. I never knew him to be into metal. He was a skateboarder who listened to mostly punk. And a lot of I don't even know what you call that whole Duran Duran thing at the time. New romantic, I guess, is what it would have been called.
Sure.
So he was kind of into that whole scene. And he came in one day. I came to this band late. This might have even been 88. But he came to school with this album and wanted me and my whole crew to listen to it because he found the next great thing. And I was like, who is this kid? What is he giving us? And he handed me, no joke, this.
Oh, dude, that's my next one too.
And I was like, what? This looks metal as hell. What? Why are you giving me this? So it was an odd time because he was a very trusting kid because he let us all borrow it and he had the vinyl too. And we went home and made copies of it. And I was the last in the rotation to have Dan's vinyl copy of this. And something happened, and to this day, I still don't know what it was. He disappeared from our school. He did not come back. And I tried to do my due diligence and find his parents or something. And I've got an album of yours, and he never showed up again. Funny postscript to that story is when I was in my 20s going out on a date, and date wanted to go dancing, of course, which is not my thing, most of our things as metalheads. But we went to this club, and he became a very famous local DJ. And so we're at this dance club, and DJ Dan is here, and I spent my whole night avoiding him seeing me because I figured he would remember that I had
Oh, rather than try to give it back, you're trying to keep it.
Steal it. Wow.
I was committed to it at that point.
Well, that Scorpions guy really rubbed off on you in strange ways, Daryl.
Right. I'm the muscle now.
Yeah. Fuck you. I'm keeping your record, bitch. Yeah.
Scorpions guy is somewhere right now nodding his head like, dude, that's not the code.
Yeah, right.
Dennis has a similar story here.
Daryl broke
Nice.
the oath.
Nice.
Yeah, he broke the oath.
So yeah, the girl I was with thought I was crazy. She was like, he does not even remember you, let alone that he gave you that record. And this is the copy of Dan's. This is, I've talked about this a million times too, my favorite album of all time.
Is it the Green Label? Green Label first?
Yeah,
lesson?
this is Green Label Combat.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So, yep, that's Dan's copy. And now I've got 6.
Right on.
Somewhere right now in the corner of America, a dude named Dan is searching Daryl Celtic Frosty on the internet feverishly, trying to figure out how to get his damn record back.
There's that blonde kid. I knew I'd find him.
All right.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, let's go back to the college radio for one more pick for the Metal Storm show. Another one that may have been the very first show I listened to my first semester as a freshman. They played a crushingly heavy song. That's just like, holy crap, what is that? I love that. Let's see. It was called Mortals Watch the Day. Anybody?
Familiar.
Yep. Anybody?
No.
I called them up as play something else from that album. They played another one called Pity the Sadness. I'm just like, I must find this album.
Look at this guy, Jason Hook. How's it going, man?
Hey, Jason.
No ska stories yet.
No. We did some Misfits, but no ska.
No.
But yeah, tracks from Paradise Lost. Yep, this one. I had never heard Paradise Lost before. And again, this album is not necessarily representative of their other records. But yeah, they played those two songs that night. Mortals Watch the Day and Pity the Sadness. I was immediately hooked. I'm like, I must find this. It took me a while to find a copy of it. The 2 stores in town, neither of them had anything by the band. So, but I think I eventually found it. I think I want to say probably my folks got me a copy of it for Christmas that year. It ended up on the Christmas list. I'm like, Paradise Lost, Shades of God. They're like, oh, Jesus, we have to go into that store for him again. But my folks were always cool about that. They would definitely go pick up a few CDs or cassettes for me from the middle section from the holidays.
Did you pick up that one alongside Don't Hurt 'Em Hammer by MC Hammer or whatever?
No. This was the Ice Ice Baby was the sister purchased in this one.
Vanilla. You got some Vanilla Ice and some Paradise Lost. Slide them on up. Hey, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, just 2 examples there tonight of stuff that I found through the old Metal Storm channel. I'd love to think in my imagination, Metal Storm still exists. And if I were within like 10 miles of that campus on a Friday or Saturday night, maybe right now in that one little corner of Ohio, there's still somebody signing on to WBGU and still doing the Metal Storm show.
They had no viewership. Of course they folded.
It's
Every damn flyer you took off the wall is
It lasted
Fuck 'em.
4 years with no flyers on the wall. It could last another 30.
Yep.
But yeah, I did find college, radio shows in other places I lived later on, but it was later. More of the stuff they played I had already checked out, so they never had quite the same impact. But yeah, I'd say especially my first 2 years in college, just was glued to that show any chance I got. Learned a ton of stuff. Got to check out a lot of bands for the first time.
All right. Yep. I'm going to show off my copy of Don't Break the Oath. Yeah. Again, same radio station, WNMC. Keith, on the tape that Scott recorded the show from, I'm pretty damn sure, memory serves me right, Keith played The Oath, which is pretty that's kind of a, the scariest song on this album. Really, with that long ass prayer at the beginning. Scared the shit out of me, but I could not. The vocals, I laughed and laughed and laughed at the vocals. I just couldn't. This is stupid, man. It's kind of creepy, but it's stupid. Again, a week or two later, hey, can I borrow your Don't Break the Oath tape? But another fun story. I remember I had my friend Steve over at the time and was listening to this record. My mom came in to tell us that dinner was ready, and he picked up this record and he's like, Mrs. Rickenen, do you see what your son is listening to? Look at the upside down crosses on here. My mom took it and looked at it and she's like, nice tune, son. I'm like, yeah, thanks. And I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing? He's like, oh, I thought she'd get mad. I'm like, they don't care. I had friends that had their Kiss albums thrown away because their parents were so religious. I mean, so I was like,
same here.
Thankfully,
Same
I did
here.
not have that problem at my house. So
Yeah.
I had friends have their Halloween tapes thrown away.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But it had hell in the name.
Yeah. Yep.
It had to be evil.
Evil stuff for sure. But yep, this was another big one. Thanks to WNMC's metal show and Scott, my friend Scott. And I will say this is another fun aside. I was in a Kalamazoo record store. Was it Kalamazoo? I'm pretty sure it was. I found in their used bin no, it wasn't. It was someplace in southern Michigan. I was just walking through some little hole in the wall record store that didn't have a whole lot. In the used bin, they had a first pressing green label of this. I bought it for $4. This was during the time where people couldn't give vinyl away. I miss the day where you could go in and buy stacks and stacks and stacks of records for nothing. But I ended up giving it to a buddy. But yeah, this is my original copy. And Camelot Music purchased it back in the day, around when it came out. So this was my first Merciful Fate album, and I fell in love, 100% in love. And this was when I thought Satan was real, and because it sounded like it on this music, it sounded like a true representation of evil and the perfect soundtrack for the satanic panic of the day, for sure. So yeah, Merciful Fate.
Nice.
Daryl.
So true. And it was weird living in those times. I mean, in our local community, there was a group that actually came around for our records. And luckily, my crew, our parents were really good. And they were like, no, I know I'm raising a good kid. Don't give him anything. And a few parents that worked in the district, because my mom was a teacher too, they kind of wanted to save face. So I threw in a few like Rat or Twisted Sister albums and be like, oh, I made a mistake. Yeah, take these. I feel bad. And they're like,
I've never heard of this. They're going door to door confiscating questionable albums. I'd be telling them to
not
shit in
like,
their hat and get the fuck off my porch.
Not trying to confiscate, just coming to your door and lecturing you and, saying that they were going to collect them up if, you were ready to surrender them. And
they're probably secret metalheads. They're just trying to beat the man.
Yeah. Look at this collection I got.
Damn it, another Twisted Sister album. I'm sick of this fucking band.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot again. Come on. These kids' taste in music sucks.
Why does everyone keep giving us copies of Cold Lake?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, my next pick. I'm going to circle back to Sonic Insanity on U of R's Metal Station. So the two guys who ran this were Merciful Mike and Evil Eye Ron. So Merciful Mike, by the time, we started listening to this show in 88, that's right when I had discovered Merciful Fate. And we knew King Diamond already. We each had Fatal Portrait and Abigail in our collection. But I was totally confused, and I had no idea why the older of the two metalheads called himself Evil Eye. I was just at a loss for that. And we asked Matt's older brother and his metalhead crowd, and they just laughed at us and didn't really give us an answer. So we had to search it out on our own. And finally, obviously, I came around to Iron Fist. You know me, Evil Eye. You know me, Prepare to Die. So we found Motorhead, and that's when I really dove into this band. Probably not in my top 5, this album, but the first one I heard, and still an excellent album. A few of these I just have in that little box set with these little flimsy sleeves, and this is one of them. But yep, my first exposure to Motorhead, and it was all because of Evil Eye Ron and trying to figure out where he got his name from.
Very cool. Kind of learning the rogues gallery of folks from Daryl's past tonight. Very cool. Good deal. Let's see.
Right.
Give me 1 second, Marty. I want to grab one more thing. I'll be back in 5 seconds.
What did you show, Daryl? I missed it. Motorhead?
Motorhead, Iron Fist.
Iron Fist? Okay.
One of the guys who did the college radio show called himself Evil Eye, and I didn't know why. So.
Oh, nice.
Searched it out.
Hey, cheers to 180 you watching tonight. We really appreciate you.
Ooh.
Definitely. If hey, do us a favor. You have friends that might be into the show, send them our way. Send them a link. The more the merrier. Y'all are an amazing community. Also, go check out our Discord server. Link in the description. There's been trouble with the links expiring. So if the link's expired, mention it in the comment section and I will update it and let you know. For some reason, it's a very cool community. Basically, all the people that talk here in the chat, they're in the Discord server talking all day, every day. So a lot of sharing of metal knowledge, albums that they're playing, and it's awesome. Great, fun community for sure.
Yeah, absolutely awesome.
All right, Alan, what'd you find?
All right, yeah. Sorry, I meant to grab 2 things for this one, and I only had grabbed one of them. Another avenue for learning about stuff back in the day we haven't talked about yet tonight. Tape trading. This was, a huge thing for folks. You'd start small, but, if you start, answering some, pen pal ads in the back of zines or just trading with friends and then trading with friends of friends, you could, build up a healthy little network of people that would send tapes back and forth and, cram as much stuff as you could onto the tapes for people. And you got a chance to check out a lot of cool stuff. Pulled a couple of quick examples. Again, I don't mess with cassettes anymore. Almost all of my cassettes are long gone. I still have a small handful that I never could convert to digital. This one is titled on the J card, Voices of the Polish Underground, Volume 2. I did a tape trade with somebody in Poland in the mid-90s. They sent me 2 good old TDK 90s. And they're jammed full of songs by a ton of different Polish metal bands, most of whom I've never heard of. I recently talked to Kellen, who's, into Polish metal, knows that scene a bit. And there are several of these that he's just like, wow, I don't even know who the heck these are. I'm just like, neither do I. It's mostly, more extreme metal stuff as you'd expect from 90s, heavy metal bands. But yeah, there's a range of styles from, more brutal kind of death metal to stuff that's more on the death doom side. And this, turned me on to a few bands. I never had a chance to follow up on a ton of these just because I never did come across their stuff. But, for example, Christ Agony, I heard on here is just like, wow, that is really cool. So I ended up eventually tracking down a couple of the Christ Agony albums. So Yeah, when these two tapes arrived from Poland too, to this day, I'm amazed I ever received this package because it showed up in my mailbox and it was it was like in a kind of standard normal padded mailing envelope. It was packaged well originally. It had been sliced open like on 3 sides though, and somebody had taken like 2 rubber bands and just kind of wrapped them around the 2 tapes sandwiched in what was left of this wrapper. And somehow the thing still got delivered to me. We'll never know how it survived the rest of that trip after getting mauled. But yeah, tape trading, a huge thing. As another, yeah. And I did a pretty good amount of tape trading. Mine was mostly in like
I had about 5 dudes I traded with. That was it, but it was a lot. And that I video traded a lot too.
Yeah, I got doing more tape trading. Kind of like very early internet time frame when you were still just like posting lists on like GeoCities and stuff. But yeah, one other example from the tape trading stuff. I also did a ton of tape trading with somebody who wrote a little bit for Sentinel Steel Zine that I talked about earlier. She wrote for the 3rd issue. Her name was Natalie. And we ended up randomly crossing paths on eBay years after Sentinel Steel was done. And exchanged emails, for a long time, did some tape trades. And she sent me a ton of stuff that was more non-metal. She sent a lot of metal stuff too, but she'd also send these really good comp tapes and CD. And this was also crossing over into CDR territory. And she would write out, all these like fantastic liner notes about stuff. It wasn't just filling out the J card. It's like, here's a fucking paragraph about everything on this tape.
Holy crap. Yeah.
So yeah, and just, reading off a few as examples. So in this particular tape trade, she had sent, let's see, tapes by And One, kind of a cool German synth pop band. TDK with 2 Bad Religion albums on it, Against the Grain and Into the Unknown, I think. Sent a 90-minute TDK with Behind the Scenes on one side and Star Industry on the other. Again, kind of cool future pop type electronic bands. The Church introduced me to that band, who I like a lot. Dead Can Dance was the first time I heard them. Death in June was on the other side of that tape. And again, just big liner notes here. Death in June, godly. I love this band and I can't explain why. I have tons of their stuff. Every album sounds different. Keeps going. Eloy, the German kind of prog band. The Essence, really good band from I think the Netherlands. It sounds a lot like The Cure, just a little more poppy. Fahrenheit 451, The Fix. I mean, she would send like small boxes of tapes at a time. There was a CDR that had all this proto metal from the early 70s on it. Stuff like Sir Lord Baltimore and Blue Cheer and the first UFO album and all. I followed up on a lot of these. One I ended up getting a disc of, A Handful of Snowdrops. Weird name. It's a Canadian 80s synth pop band, but done really, really well. They made a few albums. They were always kind of a pain to find back then, but yeah, I dug around on eBay, and they're not expensive ones, even though they're hard to get because no one's ever heard of the band. But yeah, really cool 80s synth pop stuff. She sent tapes of those. Icicle Works. There's a jazz fusion mix, which I don't remember anything about. I don't think it connected. Killing Joke. Brighter Than a Thousand Suns was in one. Talk. Then let's see. Also, she'd send all kinds of pictures. She was a pretty good photographer and liked taking pictures of people's shirts and custom jackets and stuff at shows. So yeah, just on and on and on. Tons of information from Natalie that really got me into a lot of stuff outside of heavy metal. Stuff like what I just read off. New Model Army was another one that she talked about a lot. The Smiths, stuff that I had just never really gotten into because I was so focused on heavy metal. But when we started trading tapes and all, I was kind of in the right frame of mind to check out some other stuff. And yeah, she helped a ton with that. So I found a lot of metal by tape trading as well, but also was a great chance to explore some other stuff too. You never knew what you were going to get sometimes when you tape traded, and that was a big part of the fun. Yeah. People would cram extra stuff onto tapes that you didn't know was coming, and sometimes it was your favorite stuff in that batch of tapes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Definitely cool. I've got a little bit like a side in that realm as well. I'll show it towards the end, but
Cool.
for sure. All right. Next up for me. Well, once I was starting to get into thrash and the heavier stuff, basically it all boiled down to people mentioned it. Yeah, reading through thank you lists is one way we learned about other bands.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the labels that the bands that we liked were putting out consistent stuff. And so basically our internet back then was the compilation.
Mm-hmm.
These are 3 humongous compilations in my development. This one being probably one of the biggest and best comps ever. Doomsday News from Noise Records. You've got Scanner, Rage, Death Row, Corner, Tankard, Sabbath, Halloween, Vendetta, Celtic Frost, Creator, and Voivod.
Yeah, it's a good lineup.
To this day, I've listened to so much I can put this on and start humming the next song before it even plays because I just know it so well. This one was a humongous comp for me as well. Probably first time I heard Trouble was from here. Hallows Eve also. Omen. I mean, all the classics. The first Metal Blade comp is awesome. Absolutely great. What a freaking lineup. Metal Church, Voivod, Hyrax, Omen, Slayer, Lizzie Borden, Fate's Warning, Pandemonium, Tyrant, Thrust. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Attacker.
the Fist High album. Yeah.
Yep, Warlord. Absolutely crushing. And of course, this was the one that I got this for $6.99 at Vinyl Solution Records in Grand Rapids, Michigan. $6.99 import LP. And it's getting this on vinyl is the smallest way to get this because basically the cassette and the CD had quadruple the tracks on it. But you got Morbid Angel, Repulsion, Carcass, Godflesh, Napalm Death, Terrorizer, Bullet Thrower, Intense Degree, Filthy Christians, which I bought records from every single one of the bands on here. Same with Metal Blade, same with Doomsday News. So back in the day, we didn't need the internet. There was just no underestimating the importance of the compilation. A well-considered and tracked out compilation is humongous for a label back in the day. And all of these are great. There's many. Some have been named in the has mentioned many comps in here as well. And it all depends on where you jumped in at, but those are 3 humongous ones for me.
Yeah. Marty Wilson's asking if you had a 7-inch with your Grind Crusher.
I did not. It did not come with a 7-inch. I don't know what pressing I have. Does it matter? Did they repress it later with a 7-inch?
I don't know. Maybe the original came with a 7-inch. Eric did do that on a few things, especially like for the UK or Euro only pressings. Sometimes some things would come with like a bonus 7-inch.
I bought
one
this.
of the early Napalm Death albums came that way.
I bought this the exact same day, the same place as I bought Entombed's Left Hand Path on vinyl, the original pressing with the Mass Death sticker stuck right on the hype sticker stuck right on the record. So yeah, I don't know. This did not come with a 7-inch, unfortunately. So
that's interesting. Okay, Wilson saying that the original for the UK at least. Yeah, I think it's Utopia Banished. Maybe also had a 7-inch that came with it, but only on the UK version. So
okay,
yeah, cool. Weird. Wilson never knew that about Grind Crusher.
Did not know that. Yeah. Was this Prometheus? Just FYI, there's a cool YouTube channel called 80s Forever that posts ultra underground 80s new wave stuff. Pretty awesome. Huh, cool. Check it out. All right. Daryl, you're up.
Yeah, comps. Those were huge. I had a flashback. S&T Young just had a recent video where he showed a comp called Masters of Metal that I remember having on cassette, and it just brought me right back.
Yep.
Comps were huge.
Yep. I think Jürgen did a comps video not too long ago also.
Yeah. All right, my next one. We are going to take it back all the way to the beginning with the mentor part, at least. This was the gentleman who dropped the needle on Love Gun and first set everything in motion.
I can't wait to hear the name of this character. I'm hoping it's like Skunk or Loogie or something.
We're going to have to make up something cool for him because
Bong. His name is Bong.
It's another
sugar or something.
But this was my buddy Matt's older brother, and older by quite a bit. When we were in third grade and I first heard Love Gun, he was a sophomore in high school. So separated by quite a bit of age. And he's the one that turned us on to Kiss, to Sabbath, to Priest. Those were the bigs. But I always remember the look of his room. If you walked in Dan's room, there were two things on the wall, and it was the strangest combo I'd ever seen. He used to take the covers of TV guides and hang them in his room, which I thought was weird because it's kind of like a timestamp, but it's a timestamp of all the crap we're not really into. It's like, why do you have a picture of characters from General Hospital on your wall, kid? But whatever. So he had all these TV guide covers and then posters of one and only band, his favorite band of all time. And this will be the only time I step outside of metal, but it's the obvious pick for Dan, and that is ZZ Top. He loved ZZ Top. And when we heard this, we thought it was cool, but even at the time, we're like, wow, this seems like old man rock. And then as they went on into the 80s, it only got worse with their image, at least, with MTV and Sharp Dressed Man and all that. So that wasn't going to pull us around and pull us from Slayer to ZZ Top. But it took me a long time to get there. Dan would probably be disappointed that it took me 42 years to check out ZZ Top, but better late than never. So of this box set that I have, this is probably my favorite of their collection, Duello. I mean, I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide, Cheap Sunglasses. Those might be two of my favorite ZZ Top tracks. So this one's a standout to me. So Dan, thanks for introducing me to Kiss and Priest, but this one took me a while.
Yeah, ZZ Top's fun, man. They're just a fun band. Yeah. Blues to the core, you know?
Yeah, we got some people that are really in big. Carbon, I think, if he's in the chat, he's big into ZZ.
He was earlier, yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, Nick, the Relapse catalogs back in the day, I sit on the toilet with a highlighter and I'm going to get this. They would have those two for one, buy two, get one free of the 7 inches. I would go through and highlight about 100 of them and pick 2 batches. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was looking for one of those Relapse catalogs for tonight, and I thought I still had one of them, but
I didn't keep them.
I thought I kept one, but I must have lost it somewhere along the way. Yeah, that's okay. So TV Guide and ZZ Top.
Yeah,
my Ride the Lightning and Busta Rhyme combination doesn't sound so weird now, does it?
Oh, that's weird. It's still weird. Very weird. Yeah, don't try to pass this. Don't try to downsize this.
No. I'm throwing your buddy under the bus here to take the
All right, I'm going to use
your creator and De La Soul tape purchases, whatever.
Mariah Carey and Destruction.
Yeah.
Right.
Although I gotta say, those Mariah Carey demos are fucking feral.
Sick. Yeah.
Somebody out there will get that. But
I'll
Marty
be right
mentioned
back.
Right on.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Marty mentioned compilations, and compilations were, a huge gateway to discover so much stuff because they were often cheap. And you got to check out, 8 to 10 different bands sometimes. And often you didn't know very many of them. I've shown this tape before.
This is the truck stop tape. I love this story.
Yeah. I found this, and again, we've all seen those piles of cassette tapes at, drugstores and gas stations when we were kids, and they were always horrible crap. But, this one random stop for a quick piss and a drink turned up thrash metal and had just I bought an album by every single band on this tape. I think there's There's not a single band on here I didn't buy a full album by. Some of them took a while, but every single one eventually was on my shelf. The one I picked to highlight tonight, this was my first time checking or getting to hear a band called Savatage. And the song on here is kind of an odd one. It is 24 Hours Ago, which, compared to like, all the really heavy thrash and, a few more commercial things thrown on here, like Vinnie Vincent Invasion, the Savatage track, was a very weird, kind of creepy one. 24 Hours Ago, it has kind of a slow, stuttery pace to it. It was always like, that's kind of a weird but cool song. I couldn't really get a feel for what the band would sound like. But yeah, I remember playing this like on a boombox in the back of a bus on a band field trip at some point, and like one of the other girls who was into heavy metal, kind of like looked over the seat. She's like, "Are you playing Savatage?" I'm just like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh," it was one of those kind of moments. Like, "Oh, so you don't just wear Motley Crue shirts made with puffy paint? Okay, you're more interesting than I thought you used to be." And yeah, so of course that song 24 Hours Ago eventually led me to Hall of the Mountain King, one of the real giants of 80s US heavy metal. I think this gets overlooked sometimes. I mean, obviously people know it, but I think it's underappreciated. You are hard pressed to find many albums in this style better than this. Savatage always had a unique sound among their peers. And for me, this album, captures their early phase the best. A lot of folks love Sirens. Sirens is fine. Power of the Night has a ton of good stuff on it. But this album's just a fucking monster from start to finish. And it opens with this very strange 24 Hours Ago kind of track. It's a sort of atypical song, but it's a really cool and different song. But yeah, then the album just goes from classic to classic after it. But Savatage, if I just saw this in a record store, it's like, what the hell is a Savatage? Is it like sabotage being misspelled? I probably wouldn't have picked it up for a long time. But the compilation tape had already cued me in that it was cool, and it made me look cooler to Valley. That was her name. So it's like, okay, if she's into Savatage and I like this song, now there's two good reasons to check this out. But yeah, the number of things I have bought because I heard them on compilation tapes, I couldn't even pretend to count them. Dozens and dozens and dozens of purchases. Thanks.
I would buy everything on the comp, something from every band on the comp.
If I liked the band, it went. I had one. I think I had a different volume of that Best of Metal Blade than you did. The one I had, it may have been volume 3, but it had Candlemass. It was the first time I ever heard Candlemass. And I literally ran back to the record store and started looking for Candlemass albums in place. But yeah. And this is one of those things that has become a lost art form. Compilations these days are few and far between, and they don't get as much attention or love as they used to because you can just, again, click, 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 and check out every one of those bands. You don't necessarily need compilations the way that you did back then. Back then, they were a vital part of your heavy metal learning. Now, just not so much a thing.
Tony's asking the questions that we all want to know the answers to tonight, it seems.
There is no photographic evidence of such a thing, Tony. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, it's funny. I remember, back to the old internet days where we would the thanks list and also looking at band t-shirts, bands wearing other bands' t-shirts. Well, I was a humongous Creator fan. Love that band. And in a magazine, I saw Ventor wearing a white Soothsayer t-shirt.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that looks sick. It must be another cool German band, which they weren't. They were Canadian. But lo and behold, it wasn't much long after that. Camelot got in this have a good time Soothsayer. I'm like, oh, yep, that is coming home with me 100%. And it's funny, I have not listened to this tape in ages. Last night when I pulled this, I pulled it up on the internet and listened to it, and the thrash stuff on here is freaking awesome. They're a really great band, but they do some some goofy party type songs on here. The Game, where he's just a lot of clean singing. It's weird. It's not even really punk. It's just bizarre. It's a bizarre twist to the thrashy kind of pseudo technical songs just rip. And then they put a song in like The Game or Go Team Go. It's just like, it's just, it kind of screws up the consistent flow. But yeah, man, it's still today. I listened to it last night. It was kind of a cool blast from the past. I'm still singing along with some of the songs. I'm like, shit. It's just weird how I forget so much shit, but an album I haven't listened to in decades, I can still sing along with parts of it. It just shows you how invested we were in the shit we bought back then. You know, I bought this tape at Camelot. It was probably one of 4 I bought that month, or 3 or 2, depending on how much money I had. Whether I liked it or not, even the shit I hated, I listened to over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, it's just nowadays, especially when we get older, you know, you get some money in your life, you know, you work and you have a budget for buying music or whatever. You buy so much shit, you listen to it once and you put it on the tape on the shelf. No one sits and sinks in with the music anymore, unless, you know, you really fucking love it. But it's just kind of disposable. It's kind of disposable media, it feels like. Anyway, that's another topic, I would suppose. But
a good point.
Daryl.
But yeah, another topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely remember that I bought this tape. I'm going to learn to love it. Or I was telling Alan, Mordred, Fool's Game is my big one when I think
I love that album, other than the funky songs. That's good.
When they did that Rick James, I was like, what did I purchase?
Yeah.
But I listened to it over and over and over again. I do like it now. All right. This round will definitely be the weirdest pick of the night. So if you guys are ready for this, this is a band that I think I've only heard Darcy and maybe Chromie talk about. So this was 87, and we're going back to the movie theater. My buddies and I used to love going to the movies because we could spend the whole day doing the circuit of the mall, going to Camelot, and then we could walk over and play mini golf and hopefully hit on the girls and then go see a movie. So we were doing the hat trick of activities. And we went to see the movie The Gate in 87. And in the movie The Gate, these kids...
Coolest movie poster ever, really. It's a cool image. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So these kids open a portal to hell in their back lawn, but the one character was a metalhead in this movie. And his back patch was a band called Killer Dwarfs.
Yeah. Canadian represent again.
Yep.
Nick called it right before he said it.
Oh, nice. Well done, Nick. So I used to have Stand Tall. We went back over to Camelot and I bought Stand Tall on vinyl. And do you guys remember that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Last Crack. That kind of fit. I always looked at that Last Crack album with the guy buck ass naked on the cover. I'm like, I don't think I need to come home with this one.
Right. They had such a goofy presence, always making faces in the video, and that Stand Tall video where they're making their own records in the house with the iron and putting the center labels on with plungers. It was just so goofy. But the music was actually pretty good. I thought of them as kind of a Canadian Dokken to me. So Stand Tall, I really enjoyed. This I just picked up because I found it. Cheap cassette bin. This one's not as good. Whatever it's called, Dirty Weapons. I think it's their third. Not sure what year this is, but this is 90. Yeah, this one's not very good. But yep, Killer Dwarf. So I had to seek that out after seeing that kid's back patch in the movie.
Right on.
Not all of them were home runs.
All right. Alan.
All right. Another thing that I learned a lot from in terms of seeking out metal records was around 94. I started reaching out to dealers for mail order stuff. Yeah, I had gotten into new wave of British heavy metal a couple of years earlier, but it was really hard to find stuff. Again, living in rural area, and even going, to college, there just wasn't a lot of that stuff around at the time. Every now and then I could find something at a record show, but it was very slim pickings. This is before new wave of British heavy metal had kind of started to get a ton of retro interest, so there weren't a lot of anthologies or anything like that out yet. And so eventually it's just like, well, shit, I want to hear more of this stuff. I looked in the back of, some different magazines. There were a couple of people advertising, sale lists, the old, send self-addressed stamped envelope kind of thing. And so, started, getting mail order catalogs like this one. This was, from one of the better known mail order guys in the 90s. His name was John Allenson. He, for a while, ran I think it was a record bar. It wasn't a Camelot, but I think it was a record bar in Bluefield, West Virginia. And yeah, always had a ton of new wave of British heavy metal. I mean, the fact that, on the back cover of his mail order thing, he had Triarchy, Sparta, and Joker, just like, this is what I'm looking for. And it was really straightforward. It's like, here's a list of the records, just real basic info on like, condition, album title, price. You had to call them up between certain hours of, the evening, tell him what you wanted. He'd let you know if anybody had already bought it. You mailed him a check or a money order, and he mailed you the records. And like Marty, you were mentioning it earlier about, taking the Relapse catalog and like going through and marking stuff up. Same exact thing.
You had a color coded system. I was lucky to have one yellow marker that worked.
And yep, would color code. Yeah, the orange was definitely want, must buy. Pink was want, but the price is a little higher. Don't know if I can afford it. Green was looks neat, but I can wait. 2 dots meant that it was a new wave of British heavy metal thing, et cetera, et cetera. So
you were combining dots and marker. That's very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah. I had a system. It worked. So yeah, this was, how I started finding a lot of stuff. So again, it's, maybe bands I knew the name of, maybe I'd heard like one song on a compilation, but it could never find anything by them. So you go through here and, like you said, work for a couple of weeks flipping burgers and mowing grass. And, he sent one of these catalogs about once every other month, I think. So, you'd save up for a couple of months and then check out what they've got. Let's see, what kind of stuff did we have in here? We could get Grim Reaper's See You in Hell for $10. Holocaust's Heavy Metal Mania for $30. Jaguar, This Time, a horrible album. We won't even bother looking at that because that was a piece of shit. What other kinds of things did I highlight in this? This was one of the first catalogs I got. So let's see. I think he had a copy of the Satan 7-inch in here. Let's see how much that cost in 94. Satan Heads Will Roll 7-inch, $200. So pricey even back then, but these days copies will push 1,000. So there you go. But yeah, tons of cool stuff, things I'd be looking for. But again, also you'd start seeing other stuff you had never heard of, and if you had a few extra bucks, you'd get into the blind buying scenario and be like, okay, throw it in the box and we'll see what we can get. But yeah, I bought stuff from that guy for years. I actually, since he actually lived relatively close to where my family lived, I actually went to his place a few times. And when he opened the record store in Bluefield, I drove up there at least once or twice and would buy some records from him. Also traded a few records from him. I was talking to Jason over on the Black Leather Eyes channel earlier today about a trade I did with that guy. So yeah, it was a good way to check out stuff for sure. You couldn't find a lot of that. Even by the early 90s, that stuff just was not in record stores whatsoever. So if you wanted to hear those bands and learn about them, mail order catalogs sometimes would definitely work out.
Yeah.
I'll show. One thing I'll show is just an example of something I did buy. Got the Valhalla EP out of one of those early catalogs.
Cool cover.
Very cool cover and a good record. I think this was a band from Pittsburgh, if I remember right. Good traditional heavy metal with kind of slightly eerie synths over top of it, which kind of worked well. The thing that was cool about this was one of the first times where I kind of got to Yeah, well, I had learned just enough from these mail order catalogs to pounce on something that was a good deal. Because I had seen this listed from one dealer out of New York, and he had a blurb right up about, very rare private press from '84, and he wanted like $100 for it. So I'm like, okay, that ain't happening. But then, like a couple of months later, this guy in Virginia, I saw it listed in his catalog, and it was only like $20. I'm like, $20? Wait a second. Didn't that guy from New York want $100 for that record? I kind of dug through the stack of them. Like, yeah, that's the same thing. I'm like, well, for $20, I can take a chance on it and see. Called him up and asked. He's like, yep, I got it. $20. I'm like, okay, add it to my stack, please. So yeah, it's just like, sweet, this guy's selling it cheap, and I just saved $80. So it's just like, all right, I'm learning the ropes here and starting to recognize what's a good deal. But yeah, this is a cool one. It's been reissued, so if folks are interested and haven't checked it out, it's got, again, kind of a good, slightly eerie tone to it in the vocals as well. Gives it a kind of a nice personality.
Nice.
All right, Marty, what you got next on your stack?
All right. Well, again, my friend Scott, again, a big mentor. He got me into punk crossover stuff. This is one of those bands he played me on tape that absolutely, first time hearing it, blew me the fuck away. God, look at that artwork. It's just absolutely classic. Even the back, all the way, the border, all the way around, just absolutely great. This album rules. It sucks. This band, Tommy and Blaine have been at it for a long time, and Blaine splintered off with other ex-members of the Accused and started the Accused AD tribute band. Tommy just keeps suing them essentially. But Tommy Niemeyer, is that his name? He is an absolute amazing riff writer. And this shit, yeah, it's crossover, but this band to me was always the best crossover band. The riffs were just so sharp and smart. Blaine's vocals were just absolutely sick. Absolutely love this band. Love this album. Scott turned me onto this. He turned me at the same time, the same car ride. I think it was this and DRI's Dealing With It. 2 albums, which to this day I absolutely worship. And he got me into Minor Threat and Sex Pistols and GBH and Exploited, all that stuff. He was very instrumental in me branching out my musical taste just from metal and rock. But this album right here is an absolute banger from start to finish. Love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, ouch. Frosty's next.
Yeah, The Accused rules. That's
my God.
That's my favorite. Actually, all I need now is Grinning, which is a tough album to get.
It's so good. It's such a good album.
It is.
Yep.
All right. My next pick is probably the person that is my metal mentor in a greater sense of the word than anyone in my history. So this was my good buddy Matt, whose older brother was Dan, the ZZ Top and TV Guide guy. Matt was in the know with everything. He started playing drums at a young age. Never into the other circles my group ran with, like the sports crew. He was just all about music all the time. We graduated. I stayed in touch with him. He had his local metal band, kind of a crossover band, doing a lot of DRI type stuff. And he was one of our local tattoo artists. And I would run into him time to time. And as time went on, I'm not a big social media guy anyway, so we lost touch with each other. This was about 7 years ago. I just randomly saw him out at a bar, and we sat and talked about the old days, about metal, about people we knew back in the day, his parents, my parents. Man, we must have just talked for 2 hours. And he was telling me that his band was playing a show at a small club later that week. And just as that day came, just thinking about parking downtown and all the old man BS that goes through my head. And, I'm not going to go to the show. I'll catch him next time. And 2 weeks later, Matt was gone. So it was just one of those things that I felt crappy for a few minutes. Then I was like, I'm not going to beat myself up because, obviously we didn't know. And we had that amazing night, just the two of us closing the bar, talking about metal in the old days. And but one band he put on my radar that was just so huge back then, Venom. I mean, we had just barely started our journey into Maiden and solo Ozzy, and I was still listening to some Rat and Kiss, and he brought out this. And I was like, man, it doesn't sound very metal, but man, those lyrics are intense, and that album cover. And obviously, to this day, I still hate Teacher's Pet, but the rest of the album rules.
I didn't like that song. I'll defend it. I don't care. It's fun. It's got the Venom skanky, sleazy attitude. I don't know. I dig it.
It does. That combo of childish and like sexual is just, I don't know. That's a bad combo. When you
Teacher caught me masturbating underneath the desk.
Right.
Yep.
Looked at me and winked her eye. Said, "See you after class."
Yeah. I do get your point about the track though, Daryl, that it does feel a little out of place on the album with everything else being much more on the satanic blasphemy side, and then all of a sudden they're doing this weird X-rated version of Van Halen's "Hot for Teacher."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I do get why it feels kind of jarring to you.
Yeah, it should be a B-side or something. It shouldn't be on this album.
Then you look at songs like Nightmare, which were just on a single, and that's a great fucking Venom song.
Yeah.
That wasn't on a proper album.
A lot of the good Venom tracks
Warhead?
early on, they're not on the LPs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Warhead was on At War with Satan, was it? Originally?
Wasn't Warhead on
No, it's
that's
Possessed? No, I could be wrong.
No, the Warhead I think is another non.
I could look it up
track.
real quick.
Yeah.
Then, I think you're right. Venom.
Yeah, it's not on At War with Satan.
Yeah, I don't think it's on Possessed.
Oops.
No, it's earlier than that.
Yeah, because the reissues they put it on At War with Satan.
Oh yeah. The reissues, they load bonus tracks up.
Yeah.
All right, good one. Good pick. Alan.
Indeed.
Warhead was a single. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay.
Yep.
Separate and Wilson.
All right. Folks mentioned you Headbangers Ball earlier, and that was a big one for me in high school as well. And having to sit up till midnight on Saturday night. Folks was like, "Are you going to bed?" I'm just like, nope. Like, oh, that's right, you're watching that thing. Which again, my folks didn't mind. Like, okay, just keep it turned way down because the rest of us are trying to sleep. So, I was trying to sit right on top of the TV because I'd have the volume on 3 or something to hear. But you got to, and like you said earlier, Daryl, there was a lot of junk included in Headbangers Ball. Rackman has said in interviews, for a long time that he always did want a focus on heavier stuff, but
he didn't like it.
But that
anyway,
a lot of folks have always accused me not liking the first place. He's like, I understood that's what we should have been playing more of, but the station didn't, kind of agree with me. They're like, no, here, play this fucking Pearl Jam thing some more. He's like, you're playing it during the day. Why do I need to play it on the Headbangers Ball as well? Why don't I play some of this other heavy shit coming out? So again, is he being honest? Is he doing some revisionist history? I have no idea. But he at least, says that, he did try to weed out some of that stuff, but it was just a case of, the channel making the calls wanted certain things on there. But you still did get some good music as well. There were lots of things I hear for the first time on Headbangers Ball. And you went to school on Monday, and that was, the talk of the metal kids. It's like, did you see this new video from such and such? Did you catch, that Law's Rocket video or, whatever? A big one for me that came out, I don't know, junior or senior year was the music video for Dead Embryonic Cells, heralding the coming of Sepultura's Arise. And this was the first time, to my knowledge, anyone in my high school had heard Sepultura. If anybody had Beneath the Remains or any of those albums before this, I never knew about it. They never talked about it. They never played it. Nobody dubbed it for anybody. So I think this was really our introduction to the band. Liked the song on the video quite a bit. The video is pretty straightforward. It's mostly the band just playing. But yeah, it was a cool song. I liked it because it was heavy. It was obviously like, okay, they're doing a death metal thing, but it still feels very thrash metal as well. Death metal was kind of new to us around that time in high school. Again, it took a while for these things to trickle into our area. So the fact that it felt like heavier than most of the thrash we were used to listening to, but it didn't seem like over the top crazy death metal either. It seemed like it was striking a good balance. So yeah, it was something that I may have bought this the day it came out. I feel like it came out really late in 91. Maybe I'm off by a year, but I think like me and a buddy had driven to the mall that weekend looking for different stuff. And this was one of the tapes I picked up. Always loved the cover art. It was always like, I have no idea what this has to do with the album whatsoever. But it's just an awesome piece. But I didn't know at the time, but it's a Michael Whalen piece, and he's an incredible artist, of course. And so it's just a good example of one of those bands that got introduced to through Headbangers Ball, along with a lot of others. They really did again become the next time I make it to the big city in a few weeks where there's an actual record store. Yeah, I would have this list of things I'd seen on Headbangers Ball that I was hoping I could find a tape of.
All right. Cool.
Very cool. All right. Well, during this time, my musical tastes are getting heavier and heavier. And again, we're going back to this magazine. This one came out in June of 1993. Catherine Ludwig, rest in peace, was the editor for Metal Maniacs at the time. But what made this special was, you talk about metal mentors. Really, this magazine, you sit there, you go into your local grocery store, you see Sepultura, Merciful Fate, and Anthrax on the cover. Yep, this is coming home with me. And I bought every issue would arrive here in town. So I never missed an issue. And her and Alicia and all the people that were working for the magazine at this time. I mean, you got Asphyx, Last One on Earth review, Comic-Con, Megatrends and Brutality review, Neurosis, Souls at Zero. I mean, what big magazine, color cover on the newsstands was reaching middle America at the time? That's why Metal Maniacs was a big deal. Good writing and a good choice of bands. During this time, I was an avid reader of this, and I made an order to Century Media for something, and when they sent me my order, when they still did that, I got like some newsletter zine thing that came with it. I was just completely enamored by this thing. It was like a little review for each band with the logo above it, and I'm like, I could do this. Well, me and some friends started the magazine, the zine Worm Gear. This is the 3rd issue. Marty's copy, in case so hundreds and hundreds of reviews and interviews and all sorts of stuff in here. And, we used to Xerox them back in the day. We paid to have 50 or 100 of them Xerox copied at the local printer. And I would send everybody that sent us promos, I would send them the most recent issue. And one of the magazines I would always send to Relapse because they early on would service us. Jeff Wagner was a PR guy for Relapse at the time. He was one of the few people that called me and said, I'm really impressed with Worm Gear. You're going to be on our promo list. I've told this story a million times. I'm very fucking sorry. But, he left Relapse and he took over the co-editor position of Metal Maniacs. And with him, he took a list of people that he wanted to work with him to rebuild Metal Maniacs, essentially. And I got the call. And I accepted the call. And I would say out of all the people in my metal journey, the biggest mentor the true mentor would be Jeff Wagner. I owe that guy. He didn't have to give me a chance to do shit. And I just, little tiny zine up here in Northern Michigan, he gave me a chance to write for a bigger magazine. And through his editing and friendship, I learned a lot about writing. Not that I'm a fantastic writer by any means, but I shifted from being a bad run-on sentence guy to actually learning where to put periods and how to structure a review and write better. And again, I looked up to that guy immensely, and I still do. He's an amazing guy. He's a super sweet person. His knowledge of music is endless. And again, I owe that guy a lot, not only for his friendship, but for the chance he gave me, which it still to this day means a lot. But through Metal Maniacs and that whole time, through Metal Maniacs and other magazines, I was reading about this rising black metal thing that was happening. You know, of course, we all focus on the negative, right? All the crime and shit that was surrounding all this seemed to be like the hot topic marketing ploy was, you know, the crime and the church burnings and all the stuff. Well, I finally pulled the trigger, and this was probably one of the last times I ever ordered from Century Media. The first two black metal albums of the second wave Norwegian scene I bought was De Mysteriis Dom Satanas and the Emperor Enslaved Hordanis Land split, which is the misprint. They sent the misprint one with the red cover, which is
cool.
I can't believe they let that go out like that, but there it is.
I think it does look cool in red just because it's so different, but
the logo, you can hardly even see it. It's there.
Yeah, it does mess up it messes up the words for sure. Yeah. I actually remember sitting and I took like a red ink pen and kind of redid that, you know, on paper myself just because I liked the way it looked. Kind of, you know, just copied it by hand.
Well, these things were these albums both completely blew me away. I'm like, wow, all this hype, all this marketing shit I'm seeing on. There's a reason why these magazines are covering it. Yeah, the crime thing is the fun thing to write about, but it is just the music actually is worth the hype. Mm-hmm. You know, even if they didn't have the crime element attached to this whole scene, the music on its own stands up. So yeah, again, I didn't have a ton of mentors per se, but media was a huge part. And Northern Michigan, if it wasn't for Metal Maniacs, I wouldn't have found out about all these other outlets and all these other avenues of buying and purchasing music. I would have eventually, obviously, but it was a very big part of it, and it turned me on to some great music.
Cool.
Daryl.
All right. For my next pick, I am going to a place for mentorship that I don't think either of you gentlemen are going to hit on. The hockey rink.
I saw Morbid Angel during the Altars of Madness tour in a hockey rink.
Okay.
In the Jackson Sports Arena. Yeah.
I almost alienated my future wife in a hockey rink on an early date, but that's a different story. We were this close to never speaking again.
Oh my God.
No. Good thing your Coulson charm smoothed that over.
Right.
The sex condor. Swooped down fourth quarter.
So I always saw a lot of connection between hockey and metal, at least in upstate New York. In Rochester and
Bathory wrote a song about it.
Yeah. I mean,
they did.
I think in our area, there's so much crossover. I mean, even the guys from Cannibal you see wearing Sabres gear all the time. I mean, not on stage, but
true.
They were a big part of the hockey community in Buffalo. And I always wanted to ask that of Scott Waters, because I know he's a big hockey guy.
He is. Yeah.
I wonder if he got interest in it while he was in Rochester, because there's such crossover between those communities. All of my close metalheads were hockey players with me, except for Matt. And I don't really hear people talk about that connection between those communities elsewhere. But anyway, we were playing high school hockey, and we were playing on a team that was a little higher level than just a traditional high school team. So we were playing teams in Canada. And we went to Hamilton a few times a year, and we had already played them once. And you kind of see when you come out of the locker room and go into the cars, the T-shirts and everyone in their street gear. And a few of the Canadian kids were wearing metal shirts too. And the second time around, when we went to Hamilton, we were going out to our cars, and a few of them were kind of waiting out as we walked out of the front gates. And we just got thrown a tape with the single comment of "Our country can do thrash too," and they threw a tape at us. And the front side of the tape was this album.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Nice.
And funny side story to this was we were so excited that we got to the car and put it in the tape deck. But this was during the time when our parents were still driving us around. And this album starts in with that great scream and
that's such
Marshall
killer.
parts. And my mom, who was not a swear, was just like, "Nope, we're not doing this yet." and popped the tape out and handed it back to me. But yeah, that was a big day. Discovering Razor was huge for us.
Nice. Good album too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that opening of martial arts heading into hypertension, that's that had me hooked on that album. It's like, I don't care what the rest of this album sounds like. It's already cool.
Right.
All right, what have we got next? Let's see. A quick aside, random mentor that hasn't been talked about yet, but it was a thing. The library. You could, in the right conditions, find things. Back in the day, you could check out music from libraries, records.
I got the early Bad Brains catalog I ripped out from the library.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. My the college library had some very random heavy metal stuff mixed in with it. And you could go over and listen to it. And so you'd be sitting next to all these other kids who are like, you could hear like through their headphones, like they're listening to like, Spanish or French 101 lessons, and I'm going up past and it's like, can I have the copy of South of Heaven, please? They had Slayer. They had Witchfinder General. They had a couple of very random new wave of
Witchfinder General with the boobies on the cover in the library.
Yeah, they sure did.
Well played. Reading Rainbow. From Reading Rainbow to fucking Hustler Mag. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was the first time I ever got to hear a full Slayer album from start to finish was in a library from the music catalog. But it wasn't just the music catalog. They also, had books. And this was one of the weirdest places I ever got any information. The little local country library in the town my parents grew up. I had gone there as, in high school, I guess, trying to do a book report or something, had to look something up. And, flipping, looking something up on the shelf, I came across a book. It was, I think it was like the third edition of the International Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Encyclopedia. And I'm like, what the hell is that? It wasn't a very big book, but, I took it off the shelf and started flipping through it. And it had tons of these old new wave of British heavy metal bands listed in it. And I'm just like, holy crap, I've been looking for this stuff at record stores for a while now, and I can't find anything. And I'm in the library in a town with 2 stoplights, and there's a book that's detailing this crap for me. And it's considered a reference book because it had encyclopedia in the name, so they wouldn't let me check it out. Like, you motherfuckers. So I proceeded to sit there for like 4 hours, and I still have the notes. I sat and transcribed the shit by hand for every band that I was, I knew, flipping through it page by page. I'm like, okay, they have an entry for Alien. There's an Alien song on one of those new wave of British heavy metal comps I've got. So I'd write down every little scrap of detail I could from the Alien entry. Then we went on to Angel Witch. They had an entry for Anvil. So I got some info on Anvil. A to Z is in here. Frank, if you're still watching, they had an A to Z entry saying they split up in 81 and Gary Owens went on to Titan. And before or after he had a run in with the Spanish authorities, which Frank knows all about. So yeah, wouldn't let me check out the damn book. So this, horrible, looks like, some kind of, murder manifesto from a Unabomber. More on the back, of course. I wrote down every damn detail I could. I have only once or twice have I ever seen a copy of that book. I've looked it up from time to time, like on eBay or Amazon. I rarely see it. It wouldn't be very useful to me today, but I've thought about trying to buy it just for nostalgia. But the one or two times I see it, they always want a stupid price for it because it's out of print. And it's like, dude, it's like a 30, 40-year-old reference book. It's not worth that much. I would give $5 for a copy if I came across it, but they're always wanting like, $80 and it's all dog-eared. So I never have bought it, but that one day in that one library, I was so in the zone just for hours cramming that stuff onto note pages. So yeah, the library, the more you know.
Yeah.
You could hear the music, and you could also, with the right book in the reference section, you could read about it.
You chat, you're killing me tonight. Awesome. Good to see all you folks.
Yes, folks
All
in
right.
the chat are helping a lot tonight. Big cheers to Wilson in particular. He's had a lot of cool facts and fact-checked several things for us. So thanks a lot, Wilson. Do appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think the internet was going at this point. It probably was. But again, this is a Jeff Wagner review in Metal Maniacs. Turned me on to this band. And again, this is a favorite of mine from the Norwegian scene. Again, I showed this last week or the week before. I don't know. I should get money from this band too for pimping their shit. But again, shall be the power of the written word. Now that it really isn't necessary anymore, I still really appreciate it. And cheers to Albert and Decibel for keeping the metal art form of magazines, newsstand magazines that cover the underground, alive. So that's definitely cool. But again, shall be from my mentor, the words he wrote about this, and a couple other people I saw. This band had a bit of a buzz about them during the time, and for good reason. This is an absolutely killer record. Again, shall be. I'm not going to go on too long about that. I talk about it every week, it seems like. So, and as is the next one too. So get ready. All right, Daryl.
That's a good one. I hadn't heard it till we did it on Album Club.
Yeah.
That's a great album.
Love that record.
My next one is very simple. I'm surprised Marty didn't mention this as a mentor yet, but Camelot itself was my mentor.
The best record store in my life is Camelot.
Yes.
I have dreams still as an old man about shopping at Camelot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when you told the story about shopping at Camelot, because I was like, there's no way we can be this similar, because I was such a creature of habit. We used to always park on the far side and go in through J.C. Penney's.
I go through Prangies now at Yonkers, and
we would go in where like the photo department was in J.C. Penney's.
Touch the ladies' underwear as I walk by. I didn't just say that out loud, did I? Sorry.
And go out into the mall, and Camelot was right there. So this is nothing more than a blind buy that was a home run, because a lot of them were not, and we've mentioned a few, but right at the beginning, maybe not right at the beginning. It might have been 86 when I picked this up at Camelot, but just based on a band's logo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the leader of the pack for once, and showing everyone in my crew.
You were the one in the scorpion shirt this time.
Yes, exactly. Listen to this, kid.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Loogie, check this out. I like your shirt, man. But check this shit out.
I wish I had my high school copy. Obviously, it's one of those albums that's just lost. I wonder who got it. But this is such an amazing record. I mean, just the beginning of Exorcist, Pentagram to Burning in Hell. I just love the intro to this album. So short one for this round. Camelot rules. I miss it every day.
Wilson, I think Canada had HMV. Wasn't that their Camelot essentially? HMV stores. Could be wrong. Good pick, Daryl and Alan. What's up? What you got?
Well, yeah, kind of along the same lines. Sometimes you just had to blind buy stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like it looked cool, or
The label's
name
right.
sounded
If it's on noise, you buy it.
Yep.
Yeah, just any scrap of information that made you think I want to get this. Now, this is not one I blind bought because I saw it in a store. To be honest, I don't know how I had heard about this. I had not heard any music by the band. I am certain of that. So I'm guessing I had maybe I saw an advertisement for it in something like a Relapse or Century Media catalog, or I honestly just don't know. But for whatever reason, I got fixated on the fact that I must acquire a copy of this album. Had to special order it through the local indie store when I was in college. Thankfully, that was not an import, so it didn't cost that much. But again, for whatever reason, I think it was just like it's a cool band name and a cool album title. So damn it, I must hear it. It was Sentenced, North from Here.
Nice.
It was a total blind buy because none of the stores were going to carry it. Century Media stuff did not make it into the stores in that town very often. They'd get a thing here and a thing there, but it was real hit or miss. And again, I wish I knew how I had heard about this, but it got stuck. It just became one of those titles I obsessed over, and it wasn't showing up, so I had them special order it for me. Jim was the big guy at the local indie store that was good at ordering this stuff. He got it for me in maybe like a week, and it was just kind of normal CD price. And so, yeah, I put this, picked it up, took it home, put it in the CD player in my dorm room, having no idea what it was about to sound like. And obviously, it sounded pretty damn fantastic. It was another one. It started because it sounded different. It's like, this is deathly, but it's very cold sounding compared to the really raw, meaty sound for a lot of the death metal that was popular at the time. Crazy guitar lines all over the place, lots of changes through the songs. It was one of those albums that's just like, okay, it's going to take me probably several listens to really wrap my head around this, but this sounds just vicious and pretty cool. So yeah, blind buys did not always work out great. We look at them romantically with nostalgia. If I stop and think about it, though, yeah, I probably had a lot more strikes than I did hits blind buying things over the years. But every now and then, yeah, they would work out pretty good. And it's what you had to do. Nobody else locally was buying the Sentenced album. None of the stores were carrying it. Wasn't tape trading yet. Had no chance to get it that way. So it was like I either just order it and take a chance, or I don't get to hear it. So you did what you had to do, and sometimes you just had to open your wallet and buy them. And cross your fingers.
Yeah,
I'm a big proponent for the blind buy. I still blind buy shit. And sometimes you had to buy some shit because it makes you respect when you get something good, it makes it that much more special. You know what I mean? Now you can preview everything. Everything you buy is great. It kind of devalues the thrill of the hunt to me. I don't know. I like going through record stores and buying shit in the used bin. Oh, I don't know what the hell this is. I could pull up my phone and listen to it, but I'm like, fuck it. I'm buying it. It's $5. I'm buying it. I might sit on my shelf for a year before I get around to it, but I'll get around to it eventually,
Yeah.
All right. That's Craig Zoller, friend of ours, friend of the channel. Craig, if you're watching, cheers, buddy. He turned this band on to me, and at the time, I wasn't ready for it. It's too positive, too happy. I wanted dark, evil, underground metal. How dare these people tell me that I'm a warrior and, I should, positive reaffirmation shit. But he was, every time we'd get together, he'd be demanding I play this one, Lost Horizons, Awakening the World. Took me a minute to get past the fact that it was, dudes in capes and body paint. And once I started listening to the riffs and really fell in love with Daniel's vocals, this album blew me away eventually. And again, me and Craig, we've back and forth turned each other on to a lot of stuff over the years, but he was always a good source. If he really, really, really loves and was so persistent about an album, I knew I need to at least pay attention. I might not always agree with him on some stuff musically, but when the planets align, it is truly a fantastic thing, and this is one of those things. And I hope I've been able to share the greatness of this album with people in this community as well.
Yeah.
But yep,
Devin's invented a new subgenre for us.
Marty Core, there it is. Like what you like. That's all I can say. You gotta like what you like. All right, I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom. Daryl, you are up.
All right. Yeah, that album is super, super positive. Took me a little while too. Great. All right. We're gonna take another go round of Headbangers Ball. This was my first exposure to this band. And it was earlier than The Coroner. I mean, obviously when you see it, but I think it was 2 years prior, so we weren't at the restaurant yet, but we were all still hanging out together and watching Headbangers Ball. And we saw the video for Madhouse.
Yep.
So we ran right out and bought this. I don't think any of us really even knew that Fistful of Metal was a thing, even. This is kind of where we were introduced. And to this day, this is still my favorite Anthrax. And probably by leaps and bounds. I mean, the second place isn't even close. I just think this thing is so beautiful, beginning to end. Lone Justice might be my favorite Anthrax song. Armed and Dangerous, especially with Joey doing it, is awesome. Medusa, Gung Ho. Yeah, top to bottom. I absolutely adore this album. So, yep, simple one. Headbangers Ball hooked me on Anthrax.
Yep. Sounds like it also was a hook for Alaskan Berg Wanderer.
Nice.
And, yeah. And Zach agrees about Medusa. Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think my introduction to Anthrax was that same thrash metal tape I showed a little bit earlier.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it was. I might be mistaken on that one.
All right.
Nice.
Alan.
All right, let's see. Another kind of connection. I mentioned before that with the Sentenced album, Jim was the guy at the store that you did orders with. The college town had 2 record stores. You know, Finders was a big store, nice store. They had the volume. You know, if you were looking for like one specific title, you had a better chance of finding it there just because they had so much stuff. It was a really big store, really nice, and all that. But Mad Hatter was the crazy tiny indie store that would have the wild stuff. You went there just to dig through every record, and you would find something pretty cool. And Jim was the guy at Mad Hatter around that time. He didn't own the store, but I mean, he basically ran it. He had really wide music taste. Knew all the different genres. Had a pretty good feel for what kids in a college town were going to want to listen to, and they ended up buying and selling a lot more used stuff than Finders did. Finders would buy stuff from folks, but they didn't pay very much, or they didn't give you much trade credit, so they had like a very small used section. Mad Hatter had tons of used stuff, so you could find a lot of stuff really cheap, and they would give you a decent amount for trading things in. Didn't take long for Jim to recognize I was going to be a regular when I started college in town. I mean, literally within the first couple of weeks, it's just like, you were in here like 3 days ago, weren't you? It's just like, yeah. He's like, you keep looking at the heavy metal stuff. Like, yeah. He's like, okay, have you seen this? Yeah, it kind of started to point things out to me, which was really awesome. By the end of my freshman year, he would also sometimes let me borrow promos that the store was getting sent. The stores would get sent a cassette or CD copy of something a few months before it would come out, so they could play it in the store. Start to get people hyped up. Be like, hey, folks maybe you want to stock this in your store and stuff. And yeah, I think it was. What year did this come out? Let's double check. 93. Okay. So yeah, it may have been my sophomore year, later in the year, went in one day and said, hey, here. I bought something, was paying for it. It's like, oh, here, by the way, take these. Like, you got to bring them back to me in a couple of days, but, take them. Don't copy them, whatever you do. Wink, wink. But yeah, go check these out. And handed me a couple of cassettes. One of them was a promo copy for Wolverine Blues. And of course, this was, a big deal because it was, Entombed returning, kind of going in a different direction. There was hype with them being on the bigger label with the Columbia connection and, the Marvel artwork and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I actually got to hear, the entire Wolverine Blues album a couple of months before it actually came out because he let me borrow the promo tape. The other one was Carcass's Heartwork. And so like, okay, these are both pretty cool. And yeah, actually, of course, took them back to, the dorm room, dubbed them off onto cassette tapes, took them back to Jim a day or two later. But yeah, Jim was a super cool guy, helped me check out a lot of stuff, through the store. He kind of understood too, with, college kids, you're on a certain budget, so he was never trying to, price things very high in the store. If you were a regular and buying things regularly, he'd knock a couple of extra bucks off. It's like if something was like $7, like I just make it $5. As long as the boss wasn't around, he would help you out on the price a little bit. So yeah, big cheers to Jim. Again, in my imagination, Mad Hatter Records is still open right there on the street, and Jim is still working behind the counter. If I stop and do the math, there's probably no way in hell that store has survived, throughout the digital and internet age. And Jim would probably be long since retired by this point. Yeah, he'd be, way up there in age.
Have you looked it up? Is it still a thing or no? It's probably long gone, but
I've never actually tried to look it up because I know it's not going to be there and it's just going to make me sad. Yeah. So I've just, it's like some things you don't need to know what happened to them. You just let it exists now in my memory.
Right.
And that's good enough. Yeah. I'll show another one next round that Jim hooked me up with. That was pretty cool. But Marty, it is your turn.
Well, my friend Scott, again, this will be the last time I mention him tonight. He was a big Susie and the Banshees fan, turned me on to Susie.
Nice.
And also in the same realm, my buddies Jason and Steve were also into. I really did sponge off some of the styles my friends would listen to, and Jason was a humongous Cure fan, turned me on to the Cure.
Nice.
Him and Steve both turned me on to Ministry. Went and saw them in 89 or 90 with those guys. Absolutely fell in love with Ministry. And it turned me on to the heavier side of electronic music. Stuff like Frontline Assembly, Caustic Grip, which I wish I knew more about the genre, so I'm trying to study and find other bands that I like in the style. This is an absolute favorite album by these guys for me. Caustic Grip, aggressive, great, really pure sounding electronic band. Laibach Nova Acropola. Front 242, Geography. They got me into the industrial stuff, the Wax Trax era. And it's still, like I said, and I'm, been recently listening to Public Image Limited and Bauhaus albums, just for something different to offset some of the Heavy Metallurgy homework. Sometimes I just don't want to think about it. So I'll put on something dark or strange or avant-garde or electronic. And it's recently really fitting my mood, which is, it's fun. It's good to have. I'm glad that friends have rubbed off other musical styles on me. So it isn't just metal. I've got a friend that lives downstate. For the longest time, he would just listen to bands like Angel Corpse, just the really fast, aggressive death metal type of stuff. And he would always get so frustrated and burn out that, death metal is just getting so tired and everything sounds. I'm like, dude, it's because you have such a laser focus on one part of the genre.
Yeah.
He's an older guy, so he grew up with Kiss, so he likes some stuff like that. But when it comes to death metal, there's a style that Jeff was into, and I always felt kind of bad for the guy because he'd buy these killer these killer death metal bands, but he just has such a small laser focus. He was always burn out, it seems like. And it's nice to have a sidestep from your, normal listening to focus on for a while. To when you come back to the metal, it's even more, it revitalizes your passion for it. Maybe.
Yeah.
If I didn't have bands like that, I would have burnt out. Maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say. Probably not, but yeah. What were you gonna say, Daryl? I mean to cut you off.
I was just starting to explore more industrial metal. It didn't hit me right at the time.
Yep.
I have a sampler from Earache that I think I got when I bought Wolverine Blues back in the day, and like Pit Shifter and all that stuff love.
Yeah.
At the time, I cannot do this.
Yep.
But I'm really digging into it now and enjoying it.
Yeah. First 3 albums by them are fantastic. Love that band.
Yeah.
All right.
What was the one we did? Album Club. Desensitized.
Desensitized. That's when they started to change a little bit, but it's still a good album. But after that, they went kind of dancey and they kind of lost the crusty. I mean, their first album, Industrial, is it's like Godflesh from a crust punk perspective.
Okay.
I love it. It's just completely nasty and gristled. And their EP after that, Submit, is my favorite of theirs. It's fantastic. That's their best work. Really good.
Okay. I'll have to look for the debut and the EP then.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do a little bit of 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon and lean on my last pick for my next pick. So much like Marty said, when you got an album back in the day, we dug into every nook and cranny and that album because I didn't know when I'd be able to purchase another one. So when I did buy Spreading the Disease, of course, that's the insert, the drawing with Anthrax and, Danny and Billy Milano and everybody from various groups and all sorts of images in here. It's the first time I saw GBH. It's the first time I saw...
Love GBH. Yeah,
I do too. Circle Jerks I had heard of before I saw this picture, but I'd never really listened to. But what drew me in was a little icon way up in the corner. It's kind of focusing. Corrosion of Conformity. It was the first time I saw that logo. And I wanted to go out and seek out everything, even though I hadn't heard it. I did get a cassette copy of Eye for an Eye, which is also an item that has been lost over the years, which breaks my heart. But I'm going to pull, seeing as I don't have Eye for an Eye, Technocracy.
Nice.
Which is maybe my favorite COC work.
I like Animosity, too. That's a good album, too.
Yeah, I like that, too.
6 Songs with Mike. That's a good one, too.
Yep. And I even like the newer stuff, even though I don't usually like that stoner southern kind of vibe. I really like COC doing it for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one. Good pick. Alan.
All right. Let's see. So I wanted to follow up with some other stuff that Jim at Mad Hatter helped me find back in the day. And again, since for folks that were kind of regulars, and there wasn't like a huge heavy metal contingency around there anyway. So, if something really interesting came in the store, Jim could would sometimes set it aside, and he knew it wouldn't be long before I'd come by anyway. I would stop by at least once a week, even if I didn't have any money, just to kind of look around and, chat. But yeah, one time, I've got 2 examples. The first one will be quick. The second one will take a little longer. But yeah, he's like, hey, someone brought in some, heavy metal vinyl. So they, oh, that's cool. Yeah, this was the mid-90s. Vinyl was dead. Nobody brought vinyl into the store very often. But he's like, yeah, we had like a small stack, maybe like a dozen records. He's like, I set these aside, though. Figured I'd give you first chance to flip through them. Let's see if there's anything you wanted. And there were a couple, including it was my first time getting a Pentagram album. He had the first Pentagram LP in the stack. And this was a band I had heard of quite a bit. I, had read descriptions or heard descriptions, so I kind of knew what to expect. That, yeah, it was going to be, kind of a heavy, doomy thing. Wanted to check them out, had just never been able to find one of their records. So I saw that, I'm just like, oh, yeah, definitely want that. And he's like, how much do you want for that? And again, there's no internet to look stuff up back then. So Jim's like, he's like, I don't know. I'm like, and sometimes, he would even be asking me, he's like, well, do you know anything about it? I was like, I know it's, hard to track down, and it's one of these smaller label things. Like, it's probably worth a little bit. I just said, like, if I had to guess, like on one of the mail order things, I'd probably expect to see it like maybe $40-$50 or something. He's like, okay. He's like, give me $20 for it. I'm just like, I will absolutely give you $20 for that. Thank you very much. And still have the same copy to this day. At least a year or so before that, he had something more interesting come into the store. And again, it was a vinyl item. He's like, I need your help finding out something about this. Someone brought it in. I bought it because it's interesting. He's like, but I don't know a thing about it. But he's like, you might. And he showed it to me. It's just like, I have no idea. I've never seen that before, but I know a couple of people to check with, and I will try to track down some info for you. So, yeah, I got in touch, with some of the dealers I had been buying from for a year or so at that point, and they kind of helped me sort it out. What it was this box set of the first 5 volumes of Metal Massacre on picture discs.
Wow.
It was a limited run of 1,000 copies, and they are numbered. This one is, I think it says number 402 on the back. Jim had never seen it before. I had never seen or heard of it before. We both knew the Metal Massacre compilations. They're on, they're pressed like this, kind of like, some of those old Slayer and Merciful Fate picture discs where the whole album cover is just in a square. Yeah. And these, instead of the orange ring around it, it's got a red vinyl around it.
Just make it all black and put it in the center. I mean, whatever.
Right. Then the same for the background. I guess keeping with the color coding kind of for Metal Blade at the time. Yeah, there were a couple of other little things in here too. The box is a little fragile, which is why I'm kind of being careful with it. But there was like a small Metal Blade pin with the original
Bloody Axe.
Yep, with the original Bloody Axe logo on it. And so, I kind of made mental notes of what it was. Went back to my dorm room, made some phone calls over the next day or two to some folks, and found out some stuff. Went back to the record store a few days later. Just like, Jim, I have some info for you about that box set. He's like, awesome, thank you. What can you tell me? I gave him, the basic spiel. And, one thing he'd asked me is like, I have no idea what to price this thing at. So I'm like, okay, I'll see if I can get somebody to give me some numbers. And I had, I was like, the 2 guys I talked to that knew about it said, if they had a copy of it and they were trying to sell it, they'd probably want, about 150, maybe 200 for it, depending exactly on condition. But, somewhere, 100, 150 easily, maybe 200. He's like, okay, why? It's like, I figured it would be something kind of priced. I'm like, yeah, apparently it doesn't show up much. And, it's the kind of thing that's pretty in demand. He's like, would you be interested in it? I'm like, I would love to have it. But it's out of my price range. It's a cool item. It's awesome. I can't pay $100 for a record. Yeah, I appreciate the effort. It's really cool seeing it, but Again, I'm in college at the time. I'm washing dishes, 3 or 4 nights a week to make some money. And he's like, well, I'm not going to charge you $100 for it. And like, okay, how much do you want for it? He's like, give me $50 for it and it's yours.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm just like, I can't walk away from this. But I mean, $50 was probably almost every dime I had.
Might as well have been $200 at the time. Yeah.
It was still a lot, but I'm like, I cannot walk away from that. I'm just like, all right, we're not doing anything else fun for the rest of this month. I was like, Jim, I won't be back in the store for a while. He's like, it's okay, I understand. But I'm like, thank you. That's really cool. I mean, I had just told him point blank, you could get over $100 for it. At the same time, this is pre-internet. There was no eBay for him to list it on. There's no Discogs to list it on. he was going to have to, and there wasn't, like I said, there wasn't a really big heavy metal community in that area at the time. So yeah, he could have put it on a shelf, behind the counter with, $150 price tag. He would have sold it, but it would probably have sat there a long time. But he was a cool guy. He's like, you love this kind of stuff. You'll enjoy it. You found out all the info for me. I didn't know shit about it. And, you told me exactly what it was worth, even though it meant you couldn't afford it. Take it for $50. And I did, and I still have it to this day.
Wow.
So, yeah. Being nice to people at stores and working with dealers and stuff, pays off sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, cool. Again, in my imagination, Jim is checking into work tomorrow morning and opening Mad Hatter, and I hope they have a good amount of sales on their next record store day.
Yeah.
All right. How many more rounds we want to do here, guys?
I'm done. I'm out of bullets, so it's just up to you guys.
I just got 3 more in the stack, and they're all quick stories.
All right.
Okay. I've got one more good story I'll tell. So you do yours if you want, and I'll do one, and we'll wrap up.
So is that pentagram that you showed, Alan, the one that went and was re-released as Relentless?
Yes.
Is that what that is? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. The Relentless reissues, there are changes to it. For example, Joe Hasselvander went in and did drum tracks for the album on the Relentless version. Hasselvander wasn't in the band when the original was recorded. It's a guy named, I think his name is Stuart Rose, was the drummer back then. So yeah, the drum track on the reissues is very different than the drumming track on the original. Hasselvander, of course, is a very loud, kind of heavy-handed player. I like his playing. It's not a criticism. It's just a sound. The original drum track's not nearly as bombastic sounding. So it is one of those cases where there's a real notable difference if you get the older press versus the reissue.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm going to come back to Sonic Insanity and listening to college metal radio. It wasn't always Extremity. I give them a lot of credit for their diverse taste. Even though we were right on the cutting edge of, the Florida death metal scene, they could have filled 3 hours with that every Tuesday night, but they didn't. They threw in a lot of curveballs, and it was the first time I ever heard this band.
Mm-hmm.
They played, what is it called? To Sleep, Perchance to Scream? Yeah, that's the name of it. They played that track, and I was just instantly in love, especially with those vocals. And one of my favorite album covers of all time.
Simple but cool.
Yeah, I just love that perspective on that. It drew me right in. And my favorite of the Hellstar lineup.
Yep. This time they did something interesting with the hands on the cover of the Hellstar.
Right. There's no weird trees coming out of us.
No electric trees popping out of his hands.
All right. You want me to fire through the last 2?
Go for it.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, this one's kind of a twofer, and they all go together anyway. I'm surprised, other than my Misfits logo, that no one's mentioned this one, because this band and these two opened my world to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, Nuwabum here, but even here, this was the first time that I ever heard a Blue Oyster Cult song.
Right on.
So, I mean, this drew me in 2 different directions. So, and not even Nuwabum. I mean, Killing Joke on this one. So, it took me in a lot of directions I hadn't been yet. So, that
Metallica are one of the best cover bands ever, really.
Yeah. Agreed. And then last thing in my stack was, I mean, when the topic mentor came up, I just thought in the simplest sense of a mentor, there are some people who are just so wise and have so much information that when they speak, you listen. So for the professor, all joking aside, I do spin this every now and then. And I've told Alan this, the track Saturday Night, I pump my fist, I sing, I love that track. But then This is where it falls apart, Professor. The middle of the album, we get Bang Bang, Rock America, and Boys Will Be Boys as a trio
We do.
that I have a hard time getting through.
Give it time. It'll
But
sink
then
in.
it improves again. I mean, even their ballads I kind of like. I can see why someone would latch onto this. It's good. It's really good. It's just that trio of songs. Whoo, that's a kick in the nads.
Well, Daryl, I'm glad you're getting in touch with your naughty, naughty side.
Right on. All right, Alan, you got one?
All right. Yeah, I've got one left. Aaron wanted me to show the band photo on the back of the pentagram, and I'm glad I did. I can correct something I just said. It is a cool band photo. Always liked it with the red kind of filter on it.
Wow.
You've got great picture of Victor Griffin down here in front, back in his old drugged out pre-come to Jesus days. Bobby, of course, over here. Martin Sweeney, who, to my understanding, really does not like Bobby and hasn't for a long time. But by this time, Hasselvander was in the band. But he didn't play on the recordings, but he is pictured and listed in the band. So they must have already swapped out drummers by the time the packaging was put together. But yeah, a cool band photo. So
It's funny, that picture came with Relentless, and it hangs right next to my turntable.
Yep. It's a very, very
Black
cool
and white
image.
version of it. Yeah.
All right, so last one here. Another friend story who got me into something I had never heard of this one before. This was in high school senior year. Had a buddy. He was not a huge heavy metal fan, but he liked a little of it here and there. There'd be every now and then he'd hear something when we'd be hanging out and be like, "Oh, this one's actually kind of cool." For example, he latched onto Halloween. And picked up the Keepers album, still likes those. I think he may have actually ordered Pink Bubbles Go 8 before I did, because that was an import only thing. So he'd pick up certain things here and there when we'd go hit them all. Every now and then he'd see some random thing at Camelot and blind buy it. He got some really oddball ones just because they were cheap and looked interesting. But for Christmas that year, he wanted to get me a tape. But he didn't want to just be like, hey, what are you looking for? It want to be more like, I want to catch him off guard with something that he doesn't know. So he had had found a couple like cheap heavy metal compilation tapes that, had a bunch of bands he didn't recognize, like from looking through my record shelves. So what he did was he spliced together, and basically made a compilation tape from these different compilation tapes, picking things that he kind of was pretty sure I didn't know about. And he gave it to me, but he didn't give me a J card. So he says, hey, listen to this and tell me what the best tracks are. I'm like, okay, what? He's just like, just do it. So I did. I again didn't know what bands I was hearing. Could figure out a song title here or there based on the chorus. But yeah, played it a few times, and it's like, okay, it's like, track 4 and track 6 or whatever, or like, the two best tracks. And he's like, okay, good deal. So he took that information. Next time I was at the record store, he picked me up a tape by one of those two bands that I had kind of, identified as like, my favorite tracks off that homemade compilation. And so for Christmas that year, he gave me a cassette copy of Heathen, Victims of Deception.
Love that album.
Yep. Mm-hmm. A fantastic album. Love it to this day. It kind of gets overshadowed by the debut for some reason. And I like the debut, but I don't play it a ton. This one for me is, a step above. Just really good, mature sounding, Bay Area thrash kind of vibe to it. But all the tracks on here are very, very good. Funnily enough, I think the track he had included on the, compilation sampler thing he made for me was off the debut album. I want to say it was the track Set Me Free. I'm almost certain it was, which is not on here, of course. But, it was the right band, and he found a tape by that band and gave it to us. He's like, I've never heard of this. He's like, you have heard of them. It's the song that is one of the two songs you picked off of that, compilation a couple of months ago as being one of the ones you liked the most. Like, well, that's just fucking cool. He went to that much trouble to sort of, help me or get me a present by a band that, yeah, I didn't know it was coming, hadn't heard of before, and turned out to be really cool. Funnily enough, he loved the album too. When we played the whole thing, he's like, damn, this is really good. And he ended up getting himself a copy later on through Columbia House. It actually showed up on their like buy 10 CDs for a penny kind of deal. And so he did what we all did. You signed up for Columbia House for like, one iteration, got your 10 CDs for a cent, and you immediately canceled.
Yeah.
So he got a CD copy of Victims of Deception for 1/10 of 1 cent. But yeah, so big cheers. That was his name was also Marty, not this Marty. But yeah, a Marty I've known. Shit, we've known each other probably since first grade. We still see each other at least once a year. Really nice guy. He still listens to Halloween from time to time too. And
Good man.
yeah, I have him to thank for getting me into Heathen. And so that will be my last pick. More stuff that friends got me into.
That's a cool story.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, Daryl, you did it.
So, yep, Tony, that's the one. And yes.
That was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for joining us. And folks in the chat, if you're unfamiliar with Celtic Frosty, you've seen him in the chat here before, but he also has his own channel, and the link to that channel is in the description. Please go subscribe. He's got 3 videos up now, and more to come, I'm sure. And guess what? You're going to see him more on this channel as well. So definitely follow Daryl for sure. And yeah, anybody have anything they want to close? Alan, what you got coming up on Let's Talk Metal?
That's a good question. I don't think I've loaded anything for Tuesday yet. I still have a handful of videos pre-made, so I'll look through them and pick something interesting. But yeah, have not done so yet. We'll get on that probably Sunday. But yep, there'll be something over on Let's Talk Metal on Tuesday, just like there is pretty much every Tuesday.
Daryl, what do you have coming up? I know you just launched a room tour. What's your next? You haven't one on the back burner bubbling, ready to go?
No, not really anything on the back burner. I might just pick up on something someone else has done and give my input on it. I might give a few more shout outs. Not sure, but I'm going to try and keep it a regular thing.
And yes, hi, Jeff and Rick tomorrow night. He has his yearly 420 stream just in time for Easter. Go check that out. And yeah, lots of good stuff happening in our little community here. There'll be reviews up next week. I've mentioned it before. Sue and John Verica did an interview with Alex from Immolation, who visited their home here a week or 2 ago. I have to edit it. I haven't even had time to do it. That's coming here very soon. I'll hopefully get that edited this weekend. We'll see. But that's coming. Should be fun. All sorts of stuff coming for you on Heavy Metallurgy. Keep tuned and subscribe. And hey, tell your friends about the Discord server. Link in the description is still working. If you are not active on it, go check it out. Now is the time before the link expires. I don't know why it keeps doing it, but it's annoying. But go check it out. Anybody have anything to add?
Nope. Just thanks again to everybody in the chat. It's been fun as always. Yeah, and a big thanks to Daryl for joining us and hanging out tonight. It was a fun topic. And,
absolutely.
Yep.
Thanks for
absolutely nailed it.
Of course. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Sorry I wasn't there, but thanks for taking it easy on me. I'll be there soon.
Right on. And Daryl, don't hang up. We'll chat here in a minute. And everybody, see you next week. Have a good one.